The story of Homo sapiens began 300,000 years ago in prehistoric Africa, during a time when the world was unpredictable and survival was uncertain. Our ancestors were one of many human species sharing the planet, yet only Homo sapiens endured. How did we survive while others vanished? What allowed us to adapt to an ever-changing environment? To answer these questions, we must look further back in time. Around 6 million years ago, our evolutionary journey began when early hominins, upright walking ancestors, split from the last common ancestor we shared with chimpanzees. Evolution is rarely simple, and over millions of years, multiple human-like species emerged. Among them were Homo habilis, one of the first toolmakers, and Homo erectus, who spread from Africa into Europe and Asia. Yet, Homo sapiens would follow a distinct path. Our species wasn't just defined by physical traits, but by remarkable mental capabilities. The human brain developed as an engine for problem-solving, abstract thought, and collaboration. These abilities gave rise to language, symbolic thinking, and cultural practices that allowed us to connect and innovate. Early evidence of this transformation can be seen in tools, cave art, and even burial rituals, markers of a species beginning to think beyond survival. Homo sapiens also differed physically. Our bodies were lean and built for endurance, which allowed us to thrive in diverse environments, from Africa's open savannas to more challenging climates encountered during migrations. Unlike our Neanderthal cousins, who were robustly built for Ice Age Europe, we relied on adaptability and ingenuity to overcome obstacles. Our species wasn't alone in the world. For tens of thousands of years, Homo sapiens shared the planet with other human species, including Neanderthals in Europe and Denisovans in Asia. These interactions were not purely competitive. Genetic evidence shows moments of interbreeding. Today, traces of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA remain in modern humans, a legacy of these ancient encounters. Migration was a turning point in our history. Around 60,000 to 100,000 years ago, small groups of Homo sapiens began leaving Africa, spreading gradually across the globe. As they moved into new and often harsh environments, they adapted with remarkable creativity, crafting tools, clothing, and strategies to survive. From the frozen tundras of Siberia to the dense forests of Southeast Asia, early humans demonstrated an unparalleled ability to adjust to their surroundings. Around 40,000 years ago, something extraordinary occurred, a burst of cultural and technological innovation. This period saw the creation of intricate cave art, musical instruments, and advanced tools. These developments weren't just practical, they hinted at a growing ability for abstract thought, storytelling, and deeper social connections. These advancements strengthened communities and laid the foundation for more complex societies. Despite these successes, other human species began to disappear. By 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals were extinct, followed by Denisovans and other hominins. Why did Homo sapiens survive when others didn't? It was likely a combination of factors: our adaptability, ability to cooperate, and luck. The journey of Homo sapiens is one of survival, innovation, and transformation. Each challenge we faced shaped our species, refining the traits that define us today. By understanding our past, we gain a clearer picture of how we came to dominate the planet and continue to adapt to the challenges of an ever-changing world. The rise of early civilizations marks a pivotal turning point in human history. This transformation wasn't a single event, but a gradual process unfolding over thousands of years across diverse regions. It began when humans transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherer groups to settled communities, establishing cities, governments, and systems of writing. This shift laid the groundwork for agriculture, politics, trade, technology, and the arts. One of the primary drivers of civilization was the development of agriculture. Around 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, a region encompassing parts of modern-day Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, humans began cultivating crops and domesticating animals. The area's climate and geography were ideal for growing staples like wheat and barley. For the first time, communities could produce surplus food, enabling them to settle in one place and form permanent settlements. Agriculture also demanded keen observation of seasonal cycles, giving rise to early systems of knowledge and record-keeping. Over time, these practices evolved into writing systems, such as cuneiform in Mesopotamia, used to track grain stores and transactions. The organization required for farming also spurred the development of governance, as growing populations needed leaders to manage resources, settle disputes, and defend against threats. Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, offers a vivid example of this evolution. Along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerians built cities like Uruk, complete with sophisticated architecture and monumental temples called ziggurats. Sumerian society was hierarchical, with kings and priests at the top, followed by merchants, artisans, farmers, and slaves. This specialization allowed people to focus on crafts, trade, and administration, leading to innovations like the wheel and law codes, such as the famous Code of Hammurabi. Similarly, ancient Egypt thrived along the Nile River. The Nile's predictable flooding deposited nutrient-rich silt, supporting abundant agriculture and acting as a natural highway for trade and communication. Egyptian civilization was highly centralized under powerful pharaohs, who were regarded as both kings and gods. Their construction of monumental pyramids demonstrated their authority and left enduring legacies. In the Indus Valley, the Harappan civilization displayed remarkable urban planning. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro featured grid-like streets, advanced drainage systems, and standardized weights and measures, reflecting a highly organized society. Though much about the Harappans remains unknown, their engineering achievements and trade networks connected them with other civilizations like Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, in China, early civilizations flourished along the Yellow River. The Shang dynasty, one of China's earliest, advanced metallurgy with intricate bronze work and established a complex social structure. Early Chinese writing and the concept of the mandate of heaven, where a ruler's authority was seen as divinely ordained, shaped Chinese governance for centuries. These early civilizations shared common challenges, managing resources, defending against threats, and organizing increasingly complex societies. Trade routes linked them, facilitating the exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas. Such networks not only enriched these societies, but also laid the foundations for an interconnected world. The rise of civilizations was shaped by geography, resources, and human ingenuity. Yet, as these societies grew, they faced challenges: internal conflicts, invasions, and environmental changes. Despite these difficulties, humanity continued to adapt, innovate, and build the foundations of modern civilization. The Sumerians and Mesopotamia. The Sumerians, inhabitants of ancient Mesopotamia, are widely regarded as pioneers of human civilization. Mesopotamia, meaning the land between two rivers, lay between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in modern-day Iraq. This fertile region, often called the Fertile Crescent, was the cradle of some of humanity's most transformative innovations. Thriving from around 4500 BCE to 1900 BCE, the Sumerians profoundly shaped early societies through advances in writing, governance, city building, and trade. Central to Sumerian civilization was the concept of the city-state, an independent political unit that redefined social organization. Unlike empires governed by central authorities, each Sumerian city-state, such as Ur, Uruk, and Eridu, had its own ruler, patron deity, and identity. Uruk, often regarded as one of the world's first true cities, reached a population of approximately 50,000 at its peak, setting the stage for urban life as we know it. The invention of cuneiform writing is among the Sumerians' most enduring legacies. Initially developed for recording economic transactions, cuneiform evolved to document laws, myths, hymns, and historical events. Writing not only streamlined administrative functions, but also preserved the Sumerian culture for future generations. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known works of literature, provides insights into their worldview and values, revealing a sophisticated spiritual and cultural life. Religion permeated every aspect of Sumerian society. Each city-state was devoted to a patron deity, and the Sumerians believed their gods controlled all aspects of existence, from natural phenomena to human affairs. Towering ziggurats served as both religious and administrative hubs, symbolizing the connection between heaven and earth. Priests played central roles in society, mediating between the gods and the people. Sumerian religious principles also influenced their legal systems. The Code of Ur-Nammu, the oldest known legal code, predates the Code of Hammurabi and emphasized justice through compensation rather than retribution. The codification of laws marked a transition from tribal customs to organized governance, reflecting the increasing complexity of Sumerian society. Agriculture was the backbone of Sumerian civilization, sustaining growing populations and fostering societal growth. By developing an advanced irrigation system, they harnessed the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to offset the region's irregular rainfall. This enabled the cultivation of staple crops such as barley, wheat, and dates. Agricultural surpluses supported population growth and societal specialization, allowing individuals to focus on crafts, trade, and governance. Trade played a crucial role in the Sumerian economy. While Mesopotamia was fertile, it lacked essential resources like timber, metals, and stone. To acquire these, the Sumerians established extensive trade networks that stretched to the Indus Valley and the eastern Mediterranean. These networks facilitated the exchange of goods such as textiles, grain, and crafted items for copper, gold, and other valuable resources. This interconnected trade system was an early precursor to global commerce. Despite shared cultural and religious practices, Sumerian city-states often competed for dominance over the region's fertile plains. These rivalries are documented in the Sumerian king list, which records the reigns of rulers and shifts in political power. Figures like Gilgamesh, who became legendary through epic poetry, exemplify the enduring impact of these early leaders. The decline of Sumerian civilization was gradual, driven by external pressures from neighboring peoples such as the Akkadians and Amorites. The rise of the Akkadian Empire under Sargon the Great in the 24th century BCE marked the beginning of the end for Sumerian independence. However, the Sumerians' cultural and technological achievements persisted, influencing successor civilizations like the Babylonians and Assyrians. The Sumerians laid the foundation for key aspects of modern civilization, including writing, law, organized religion, urbanization, and trade. Their innovations transformed Mesopotamia into a hub of cultural and technological progress, shaping the trajectory of human history. Their legacy, rooted in ingenuity and adaptability, continues to resonate in the modern world. Egypt and the Pharaohs. Ancient Egypt, with its monumental pyramids, majestic temples, and powerful rulers, stands as one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history. At its heart was the pharaoh, a leader revered not only as a political figure, but also as a living deity. For over 3,000 years, this civilization thrived along the Nile River, leaving behind an enduring cultural and architectural legacy. The Nile was the lifeblood of Egypt, its annual floods depositing nutrient-rich silt that enabled the cultivation of abundant crops. This agricultural bounty sustained the economy and fostered the growth of a highly sophisticated society. Flanked by vast deserts, the Nile provided both sustenance and protection, allowing Egypt to develop a unique culture centered on prosperity, spirituality, and centralized governance. The pharaoh held a dual role, embodying both temporal power and divine authority. Regarded as the intermediary between the gods and the people, the pharaoh's responsibilities extended beyond governance to maintaining cosmic harmony, or ma'at, a principle symbolizing truth, balance, and order. Monumental projects like the pyramids were more than grand tombs. They were profound expressions of the pharaoh's divine status and his eternal journey to the afterlife. Ma'at was central to Egyptian life, and the pharaoh was its ultimate guardian. Upholding Ma'at required ensuring justice, maintaining the Nile's fertility, and honoring the gods through rituals and grand construction projects. Failure to preserve Ma'at was believed to invite chaos, or isfet, jeopardizing the natural and social order. This belief unified the people and reinforced the authority of the pharaoh. Among Egypt's many rulers, Ramses II, or Ramses the Great, stands as one of the most iconic. During his reign in the New Kingdom, Ramses expanded Egypt's territory through military campaigns and commissioned grandiose building projects. The temples of Abu Simbel, carved into southern cliffs, exemplify his architectural legacy and devotion to the gods. His long rule brought stability and prosperity, solidifying Egypt's status as a dominant ancient power. In contrast, Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs, is celebrated for her contributions to trade, architecture, and the arts. Ruling in the 15th century BCE, she revitalized trade routes, bringing wealth and resources to Egypt, and oversaw the construction of magnificent structures like her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. Often depicted wearing the traditional regalia of a male pharaoh, including the ceremonial false beard, Hatshepsut challenged traditional notions of leadership and left an indelible mark on Egyptian history. Another notable ruler was Akhenaten, known for his radical religious reforms in the 14th century BCE. He introduced monotheism, focusing worship on Aten, the sun disk, and relocated the capital to Amarna. This departure from centuries of polytheistic tradition caused cultural and religious upheaval. After his death, his reforms were reversed and his monuments defaced, but his reign remains a fascinating episode in Egyptian history. His son, Tutankhamun, is best remembered for restoring traditional practices and for the discovery of his richly adorned tomb. The construction of the pyramids remains one of ancient Egypt's most enduring achievements. Built during the Old Kingdom, structures like the Great Pyramid of Giza exemplify the Egyptians' mastery of engineering, mathematics, and organization. Commissioned by Pharaoh Khufu, the Great Pyramid stands as a testament to the immense resources and labor mobilized under his rule, symbolizing the pharaoh's divine authority and his passage to the afterlife. The pharaohs ruled a society deeply rooted in religion, order, and the promise of an eternal afterlife. They were warriors, builders, and divine stewards responsible for safeguarding their people and maintaining the balance of the cosmos. Their legacy endures not only in the temples and monuments that dot the modern Egyptian landscape, but also in their contributions to human history. The timeless allure of ancient Egypt lies in its extraordinary achievements, profound spirituality, and the enduring stories of its rulers, whose influence continues to captivate the world. The Indus Valley Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization, one of the earliest cradles of human civilization, remains a mysterious yet captivating chapter in history. Flourishing from around 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE along the fertile banks of the Indus River in modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, this civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, was remarkable for its advanced urban planning, impressive architecture, and extensive trade networks. However, much about it remains unknown, particularly its undeciphered script, which continues to intrigue scholars. One of the most striking features of the Indus Valley Civilization was its sophisticated urban design. Unlike many early civilizations ruled by centralized monarchies or religious elites, the cities of the Indus Valley were meticulously planned in grid-like patterns. Prominent urban centers such as Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured streets intersecting at right angles, reflecting a high level of governance and organizational ability. This advanced approach to city planning predates similar developments in later civilizations like ancient Rome. The civilization's emphasis on sanitation further underscores its ingenuity. Homes in Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were equipped with wells, bathrooms, and a sophisticated drainage system that channeled wastewater away from residential areas. This focus on hygiene and public health was unprecedented at the time and marked the Indus Valley as one of the most advanced urban societies in the ancient world. Another remarkable feature was the uniformity of bricks, weights, and measures found across the civilization. Bricks used in construction were standardized in size, and weights and measures were consistent across various settlements. This suggests centralized regulation and coordination over a vast area, enabling efficient construction and trade. Trade played a vital role in the prosperity of the Indus Valley civilization. Archaeological evidence indicates extensive internal and external trade networks connecting the civilization to regions such as Mesopotamia, modern-day Iran, and Afghanistan. Seals bearing Indus Valley symbols have been found in Mesopotamia, indicating a robust exchange of goods, including textiles, metals, and gemstones. This thriving trade contributed significantly to the civilization's wealth and longevity. Despite the lack of monumental temples or centralized religious structures, the artifacts left behind suggest a rich spiritual life. Figurines, seals, and other relics point to possible fertility and nature worship. The famous Pashupati seal, depicting a seated figure surrounded by animals, is thought by some scholars to represent a precursor to Hinduism or the early god Shiva, hinting at a connection between Indus spiritual practices and later Indian traditions. One of the greatest mysteries of the Indus Valley civilization is its undeciphered script. Numerous inscriptions on seals, pottery, and tablets have been discovered, but without a bilingual text like the Rosetta Stone, the script remains unreadable. This has left key aspects of their society, politics, religion, and daily life, largely unknown, fueling speculation and debate among researchers. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization is another enigma. By 1300 BCE, major cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were abandoned, and the region experienced a significant population decline. Theories about this decline range from environmental changes, such as river drying or flooding, to the migration or invasion of Indo-Aryan peoples. Some scholars suggest that the gradual degradation of the river system disrupted agriculture, while others posit that internal social or infrastructural challenges contributed to the collapse. Despite its decline, the legacy of the Indus Valley civilization persisted. Its innovations in urban planning, trade, and possibly spiritual traditions influenced subsequent societies in the Indian subcontinent. The civilization stands as a testament to humanity's early capabilities in creating organized, thriving communities. In summary, the Indus Valley civilization showcases the ingenuity of early human societies in governance, engineering, and commerce. Its meticulously planned cities, advanced sanitation systems, and extensive trade networks highlight a society that was well ahead of its time. Yet the unresolved mysteries of its script, beliefs, and collapse continue to make it one of the most enigmatic civilizations in history. With each new archaeological discovery, we move closer to understanding this remarkable chapter of human development. Ancient China and the Dynasties. Ancient China is a vast and intricate tapestry of history, defined by the rise and fall of dynasties that shaped both Chinese civilization and global history. Spanning thousands of years, China's dynastic period is marked by extraordinary achievements in philosophy, science, technology, and governance, making it one of the most enduring and influential civilizations in the world. The story begins with the Xia dynasty, traditionally regarded as China's first dynasty. However, much of its history is steeped in legend, with limited archaeological evidence to confirm its existence. Ancient texts like the Shujing, Book of Documents, credit the Xia with laying the foundations of Chinese civilization, including early agriculture and bronze working. While its influence remains debated, the Xia occupies an important place at the intersection of myth and history. The Shang dynasty is the first historically verified Chinese dynasty, known for its advancements in bronze metallurgy, the development of writing, and a highly organized political system. Archaeological discoveries, including elaborate bronze vessels and inscribed oracle bones, provide insight into Shang society. Oracle bones used for divination reveal the importance of ancestor worship and the central role of spirituality in governance and daily life. Following the Shang, the Zhou dynasty became the longest-lasting dynasty in Chinese history. The Zhou introduced the mandate of heaven, a doctrine that legitimized rulers as divinely chosen but held them accountable for just governance. This concept shaped Chinese political thought for millennia, linking the ruler's moral integrity to their right to govern. The Zhou era also saw the emergence of China's most influential philosophical systems: Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. Confucianism, founded by Confucius, emphasized social harmony, moral integrity, and filial piety as guiding principles for both rulers and citizens. Taoism, attributed to Laozi, advocated living in harmony with the Tao, the natural way of the universe, through simplicity and humility. Legalism, on the other hand, championed strict laws and harsh punishments, asserting that strong state control was necessary to maintain order. These philosophies profoundly shaped Chinese governance, culture, and society. The transition to the Qin dynasty marked a dramatic shift in Chinese history. Under Qin Shi Huang, China was unified for the first time under a centralized imperial system. The Qin standardized weights, measures, and writing, facilitating administration and communication. Major construction projects, including the early Great Wall, aimed to protect against northern invasions. However, Qin Shi Huang's rule was characterized by authoritarianism, including the infamous burning of books and suppression of dissent. His harsh policies unified China, but also led to rebellion, hastening the dynasty's fall shortly after his death. The Han dynasty followed, ushering in one of China's golden ages. Expanding upon the Qin's foundation, the Han consolidated centralized governance and officially adopted Confucianism as state ideology. This period saw significant territorial expansion and the opening of the Silk Road, which connected China to the West, facilitating cultural and economic exchanges. The Han era was marked by technological and cultural advancements, including the invention of paper, advancements in medicine, and astronomical discoveries. After the Han collapsed, China entered the Three Kingdoms period, a time of political fragmentation and war. Despite the instability, this era became legendary in Chinese folklore, immortalized in the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Subsequent dynasties, including the Sui and Tang, restored unity and contributed uniquely to China's development. The Tang dynasty is often regarded as China's second golden age. It was a period of immense cultural flourishing, territorial expansion, and economic prosperity. Poetry, painting, and ceramics reached unparalleled heights, and the capital, Chang'an, became a cosmopolitan hub of trade and cultural exchange, attracting visitors from across Asia and the Middle East. Ancient China's dynastic cycle continued for centuries, with each dynasty leaving its mark on Chinese civilization. From the foundational Xia to the flourishing Tang, each era contributed to the development of one of the world's most enduring cultures. The innovations and philosophies that emerged during this period shaped not only China, but also the broader course of human history. The Greek city-states and democracy. The Greek city-states, or poleis, were not just communities. They were vibrant experiments in governance, culture, and innovation. Picture a world where towering marble temples overlooked bustling marketplaces, where philosophers debated under olive trees, and where citizens gathered to vote on matters that would shape their collective destiny. These independent city-states, scattered across the sparkling waters of the Aegean, were united by a shared language and culture, yet fiercely distinct in their identities. Among them, Athens stands as the birthplace of democracy, a bold and fragile experiment that forever changed how humanity viewed power and participation. Unlike the sprawling empires of Persia or Egypt, the Greek polis were intimate and self-contained, each with its own government, military, and customs. Some, like Sparta, were fiercely militaristic, ruled by oligarchies where discipline and strength reigned supreme. Athens, however, charted a radically different course, laying the groundwork for democracy, a revolutionary idea that power could rest in the hands of the people. But this wasn't democracy as we know it today. It was an evolving experiment, riddled with imperfections, yet brimming with the promise of something extraordinary. In the early days, Athens was anything but democratic. Imagine a city dominated by noble families, where the poor toiled under crushing debts and inequality ran rampant. This tension gave rise to reformers who dared to reimagine the system. Solon, one of Athens' first visionaries, abolished debt slavery, a practice where citizens were forced into servitude for unpaid debts. He redistributed wealth and empowered more Athenians to participate in civic life, planting the seeds for change. Though his reforms stopped short of democracy, they set the stage for what was to come. The true turning point arrived with Cleisthenes, often called the father of Athenian democracy. In a moment of bold innovation, Cleisthenes broke the grip of aristocratic families by reorganizing the political system. He created new districts called dems, mixing citizens from different regions to foster unity and weaken traditional power structures. Imagine a world where power wasn't inherited but earned through participation, a world where ordinary citizens, regardless of their family name, could have a voice in governance. Cleisthenes' reforms laid the foundation for the most radical idea of the time, that governance could belong to the people. Athenian democracy, however, came with limitations. Women, slaves, and non-citizens were excluded, and even among male citizens, wealth and status often dictated who could fully participate. Yet the idea of direct citizen involvement was transformative. Picture the ecclesia, a great open-air assembly where citizens gathered to debate matters of war, law, and trade. Every voice mattered, and every decision was made collectively, a stark contrast to the monarchies and empires of the ancient world. The Boule, a council of 500 citizens chosen by lot, ensured that governance wasn't monopolized by the elite. This emphasis on equality before the law, or isonomia, became a defining feature of Athenian democracy. But democracy's critics were never far away. Philosophers like Plato saw its potential for chaos, warning that unchecked power by the masses could lead to mob rule. Aristotle, though more sympathetic, questioned whether democracy could balance expertise with popular will. These critiques resonate even today as modern democracies grapple with similar challenges. Athenian democracy was tested and ultimately undone by war. The Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict between Athens and Sparta, shattered the city's strength and unity. Picture a city battered by siege, its once proud walls breached, its democratic institutions crumbling under internal strife and external pressure. Yet, even as Athenian democracy faded, its legacy endured. The story of the Greek city-states is one of experimentation, ambition, and resilience. They were laboratories of ideas that would ripple across time, influencing the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and the birth of modern democracies. Athens, with all its imperfections, dared to imagine a society where power didn't rest solely in the hands of kings, but in the collective will of its people. That bold vision continues to inspire, reminding us that democracy, though fragile, remains one of humanity's greatest achievements. The Persian Empire. The Persian Empire, one of history's most expansive and influential civilizations, stretched from the edges of Europe to the heart of Asia. Its rise reshaped the ancient geopolitical landscape, blending conquest with diplomacy and governance with cultural tolerance. At its height, this vast empire united a tapestry of peoples and traditions under a sophisticated administrative system, leaving a legacy that still echoes through the corridors of history. The story begins with Cyrus the Great, the visionary founder of the Persian Empire. In the mid-6th century BCE, Cyrus, a member of the Achaemenid dynasty, overthrew the Medes and forged an empire that quickly encompassed vast territories, including Mesopotamia and Babylon. But Cyrus was more than a conqueror. He was a unifier. Unlike rulers who imposed their will with cruelty, Cyrus practiced a revolutionary policy of tolerance and inclusion. When he captured Babylon in 539 BCE, he not only spared its population, but also respected its customs and religions, earning him admiration as both a liberator and a leader. One of Cyrus's most remarkable achievements was the creation of the Cyrus cylinder, often regarded as the world's first declaration of human rights. This clay artifact chronicles how Cyrus restored religious sanctuaries and allowed displaced peoples, such as the Jews, to return to their homelands. His humane policies are celebrated in the Hebrew Bible, where he is hailed as a liberator who allowed the rebuilding of the Temple in Jerusalem. Cyrus's leadership blended power with humanity, laying the foundation for an empire built on trust as well as strength. Cyrus's successors expanded the empire's boundaries and refined its governance. Darius I, who reigned nearly 40 years later, was a master administrator who transformed the empire into a well-oiled machine. To govern its vast and diverse territory, Darius divided the empire into 20 provinces, or satrapies, each overseen by a satrap, or governor. This system allowed for local autonomy while maintaining centralized control. He also introduced a standardized currency and developed an extensive road network, including the renowned Royal Road, a 1,500-mile artery connecting Sardis in the west to Susa in the east. This infrastructure fostered trade, communication, and cohesion across the empire's vast lands. Darius's reign, however, was not without strife. In 499 BCE, the Ionian Revolt erupted as Greek city-states in Asia Minor resisted Persian control, igniting the Greco-Persian Wars. These conflicts would intensify under Darius's son, Xerxes I, leading to iconic battles such as Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis. Despite their superior resources and armies, the Persians were ultimately thwarted by the unity and determination of the Greek city-states, halting their westward expansion and marking a turning point in ancient history. Beyond its military and administrative prowess, the Persian Empire was a beacon of cultural diversity. Its rulers embraced the languages, religions, and customs of its many peoples, fostering an environment of coexistence. The imperial capitals of Persepolis and Susa stood as architectural marvels, blending styles from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and India into a visual testament to the empire's multicultural identity. Zoroastrianism, the empire's dominant religion, introduced ideas of dualism, moral choice, and the eternal struggle between good and evil, concepts that later influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. However, the empire's golden age began to wane in the 4th century BCE. Internal rebellions, administrative corruption, and a series of weak rulers eroded its strength. The fatal blow came from Alexander the Great, the Macedonian king whose military genius overwhelmed Persia's defenses. In a series of decisive battles, including Issus and Gaugamela, Alexander dismantled the once mighty empire. The fall of Persepolis in 330 BCE marked the end of Persian dominance, as Alexander absorbed its vast territories into his own expanding realm. Despite its collapse, the Persian Empire's influence endured. Its administrative practices and infrastructure became blueprints for future empires, including the Hellenistic states and the Roman Empire. Its model of governance, which balanced centralized power with local autonomy and cultural tolerance, set a precedent for ruling diverse populations. Persian art, architecture, and literature continued to inspire the regions it once ruled, ensuring that its legacy lived on. The Persian Empire was more than a political entity. It was a crossroads of cultures, ideas, and innovation. It bridged the ancient worlds of the Near East, Europe, and Asia, fostering exchanges that shaped civilizations for centuries. Balancing conquest with diplomacy, tradition with progress, and authority with tolerance, the Persian Empire remains a testament to the heights humanity can achieve through unity and vision. Its story is not just one of power, but of profound influence, a legacy that continues to shape the world today. Rise and fall of the Roman Empire. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire is one of the most compelling stories in world history, a tale of power, conquest, politics, and eventual decline that spanned over 1,000 years. From a small city-state along the banks of the Tiber River to a sprawling empire that controlled much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, Rome's story is one of both human ambition and fragility. The lessons of its triumphs and failures continue to resonate today. Rome's rise began humbly. Founded in 753 BCE, according to legend by the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, Rome started as a small kingdom. However, it wasn't until the establishment of the Roman Republic in 509 BCE that its true path to greatness was set. The Republic was built on a system of checks and balances designed to prevent the rise of a single ruler, with elected magistrates, a senate, and popular assemblies guiding the government. This structure, although imperfect and prone to corruption, gave Rome a stability that allowed it to grow. Through a combination of military prowess, shrewd diplomacy, and relentless ambition, Rome began to expand. The conquest of Italy was the first step, but the Punic Wars, 264–146 BCE, against Carthage truly marked Rome's arrival as a major power. By the end of these wars, Rome had destroyed Carthage and gained control of significant territories in Spain, Sicily, and North Africa. The Roman legions, disciplined and well-organized, became the most feared military force in the Mediterranean world. As Rome expanded, it absorbed more than just territory. It incorporated different cultures, technologies, and ideas. The Roman military system allowed conquered peoples to join its ranks, and many of Rome's greatest generals and leaders hailed from regions far from the Italian peninsula. This inclusiveness was one of Rome's greatest strengths, allowing it to bind together a vast and diverse empire. However, the expansion of the Republic also sowed the seeds of its eventual transformation into an empire. With great territorial gains came vast wealth, which widened the gap between the Roman elite and the lower classes. Political corruption, landlessness among the poor, and the rise of powerful military generals like Julius Caesar set the stage for civil wars. The assassination of Caesar in 44 BCE, rather than preserving the Republic, led to its collapse. In 27 BCE, Caesar's adopted heir, Augustus, formerly Octavian, established the Roman Empire, marking the start of an era that would bring Rome to its zenith. Under Augustus, the Roman Empire entered a period of relative peace and stability known as the Pax Romana, Roman peace. Lasting roughly 200 years, this era saw the consolidation of Roman rule across vast territories. The empire was now a mosaic of cultures, religions, and peoples, stretching from Britain in the west to Egypt and Syria in the east. Roman law, architecture, engineering, and culture spread throughout these lands, laying the foundations for much of Western civilization. Rome's infrastructure was one of its greatest achievements. Roads, aqueducts, and bridges built during the empire's height were marvels of engineering, and many still stand today. The Roman legal system, too, was advanced for its time, establishing principles like innocent until proven guilty that are still central to modern legal thought. The cities of the empire, from Londinium, modern-day London, to Antioch, reflected Roman urban planning, with public baths, forums, and amphitheaters becoming centers of civic life. However, even during the Pax Romana, the seeds of decline were present. The empire was vast, and managing it was an immense challenge. Corruption among officials, economic instability, and the growing power of the military over civilian life began to erode the stability that Augustus had built. By the 3rd century CE, Rome faced increasing internal strife and external pressure from barbarian groups like the Goths and Vandals. The eventual fall of Rome is a complex story, with historians pointing to a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures. Internally, the Roman economy suffered from inflation, heavy taxation, and a reliance on slave labor, which stifled innovation and economic growth. The empire was also politically unstable, with a revolving door of emperors, many of whom were installed by the military rather than by any legitimate process. In 284 CE, Emperor Diocletian attempted to address these issues by dividing the empire into eastern and western halves, believing it would be easier to manage. While the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would endure for another 1,000 years, the Western Roman Empire continued to crumble. By the 4th and 5th centuries CE, Rome faced an onslaught of invasions from various Germanic tribes. The Huns, led by the infamous Attila, pushed these tribes westward into Roman territory, where they sought refuge, but often turned against their Roman hosts. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 CE, a devastating blow to the city that had once seemed invincible. In 476 CE, the last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, marking the traditional date of the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Although the fall of the Roman Empire is often viewed as the end of the classical world and the beginning of the Middle Ages, its legacy lived on. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued to flourish for centuries, preserving Roman law, culture, and Christian tradition. Meanwhile, the Western world, though fragmented, would continue to be deeply influenced by Rome. Rome's legal system, architecture, and engineering became cornerstones of European development. Latin, the language of the Romans, evolved into the Romance languages and remained the language of scholarship and religion for centuries. The idea of a united Europe under a single ruler, as Rome had once been, would continue to inspire future empires and leaders. In the end, the story of Rome is one of both incredible human achievement and inevitable decline. It serves as a reminder that even the greatest powers are vulnerable to internal weaknesses and external pressures, a lesson that continues to resonate in modern times. The birth of Christianity. The origins of Christianity, one of the most influential religions in history, can be understood as a profound social, cultural, and historical phenomenon. Emerging from the turbulent world of first-century Judea, Christianity began as a small Jewish sect and, over centuries, evolved into a global religion that reshaped the political and cultural landscapes of the ancient world and beyond. Its rise, while often seen through a theological lens, is equally remarkable as a story of human society grappling with power, identity, and meaning. First-century Judea, a Roman-occupied province, was a complex and volatile society. The Jewish population lived under Roman taxation and governance, which frequently clashed with their own religious traditions and aspirations for autonomy. At the heart of Jewish identity was the expectation of a Messiah, a Savior foretold in their scriptures who would liberate them from oppression. This belief intersected with a broader environment of social unrest as many groups resisted Roman rule or sought ways to adapt to it. Within Judaism itself, there were competing factions. The Pharisees emphasized strict adherence to Jewish law, the Sadducees controlled temple worship, the Zealots advocated violent rebellion, and the Essenes withdrew from mainstream society to live in ascetic purity. These divisions reflected the diverse ways in which people responded to the challenges of their time. Into this fragmented world came Jesus of Nazareth, a charismatic preacher and healer. His life, teachings, and the movement he inspired would spark one of the most significant transformations in human history. While much about Jesus' life remains debated, historical evidence suggests he was a Galilean Jew who lived during a time of great social and political upheaval. His teachings, preserved in the Gospels and early Christian writings, focused on themes of love, forgiveness, and humility. He also spoke of the kingdom of God, a concept interpreted by many as a call for moral and spiritual renewal rather than political revolution. Jesus' message was notable for its inclusivity. He interacted with marginalized individuals, prostitutes, tax collectors, and lepers, and challenged social hierarchies. This approach appealed to those disillusioned with the rigid structures of Jewish law and Roman rule. His growing popularity, however, alarmed both religious leaders and Roman authorities, who saw him as a potential disruptor of the fragile social order. In approximately 30 CE, Jesus was executed by crucifixion, a Roman method of punishment reserved for political dissidents and criminals. Crucifixion was not merely a means of execution, it was a public spectacle designed to deter rebellion and humiliate the condemned. From a historical perspective, Jesus' death should have marked the end of his movement, as had been the case for many other would-be messiahs. However, what followed was unprecedented. Jesus' followers claimed he had risen from the dead, an event they referred to as the resurrection. This claim, regardless of its theological interpretation, became the foundation of the Christian movement. It transformed Jesus from a local preacher into a figure of divine significance and galvanized his followers to spread his teachings. The early followers of Jesus, later called Christians, were initially a small Jewish sect. They believed that Jesus' message fulfilled Jewish prophecy, but redefined salvation as a universal promise for all humanity, not just the Jewish people. This shift allowed Christianity to appeal to a much broader audience. A pivotal figure in this transformation was Paul of Tarsus, a former Pharisee who converted to Christianity after a dramatic experience he interpreted as a vision of Jesus. Paul became one of the movement's most effective organizers and thinkers, traveling across the Roman Empire and establishing Christian communities. His letters, later canonized as part of the New Testament, articulated key theological ideas and helped shape Christianity into a coherent and adaptable belief system. Christianity spread rapidly, particularly among urban populations in the Roman Empire. Its teachings resonated with the poor and disenfranchised, offering hope, community, and a sense of purpose. Early Christian communities were notable for their mutual support, including care for the sick and poor, which contrasted with the often impersonal and hierarchical nature of Roman society. The Roman state initially viewed Christianity with suspicion. Christians' refusal to participate in traditional Roman religious practices, including emperor worship, was seen as a threat to social cohesion. Periodic persecutions sought to suppress the movement, but these often had the opposite effect. Martyrdom, the public execution of Christians who refused to renounce their faith, became a powerful symbol of conviction and inspired others to join the movement. The turning point for Christianity came in the early 4th century with Emperor Constantine. According to historical accounts, Constantine converted to Christianity after a vision before a crucial battle. In 313 CE, he issued the Edict of Milan, legalizing Christianity and ending centuries of persecution. By aligning himself with Christianity, Constantine recognized its growing influence and used it to unify the empire. In 380 CE, Emperor Theodosius declared Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. What had begun as a marginalized sect in a remote province had, in less than 4 centuries, become the dominant religion of one of history's most powerful empires. The integration of Christianity into Roman governance and culture marked a profound shift, transforming both the religion and the empire. Christianity's rise reshaped the ancient world. It introduced new ideas about human dignity, compassion, and the moral obligations of rulers, which influenced Western thought for centuries. The Christian Church became a central institution in medieval Europe, preserving knowledge, shaping art and philosophy, and serving as a unifying force during times of political fragmentation. From a scientific perspective, the success of Christianity can be understood as a product of its adaptability and universal appeal. Its message was flexible enough to transcend cultural boundaries and resonate with diverse populations. Its organizational structure allowed it to survive and thrive under varying political conditions. And its ability to provide meaning and community in a complex and often harsh world gave it a resilience that few movements could match. In summary, the rise of Christianity is not only a religious story, but also a human one, a story of how ideas, institutions, and social dynamics converge to create movements that transform societies. By examining its growth through the lens of history and sociology, we gain a deeper understanding of how this once small sect became a cornerstone of global civilization. The Islamic Golden Age. The Islamic Golden Age, spanning roughly from the 8th to the 14th century, stands as one of the most extraordinary periods of intellectual, scientific, and cultural flourishing in human history. During this time, the Islamic world became a vibrant hub of innovation and discovery, blending knowledge from diverse civilizations and creating a legacy that shaped the course of global progress. From advancements in science and medicine to groundbreaking contributions in philosophy, mathematics, and the arts. This era laid the foundation for much of the intellectual revival that later defined the European Renaissance. The Islamic Golden Age began under the Abbasid Caliphate, particularly during the reigns of visionary leaders like Al-Mansur and Al-Mamun, who established Baghdad as a center of learning and culture. At the heart of this intellectual movement was the House of Wisdom, a legendary library and academy in Baghdad where scholars from across the known world gathered to translate, study, and expand upon the knowledge of ancient civilizations, including Greek, Persian, Indian, and Egyptian texts. Unlike many rulers who sought power through conquest alone, the Abbasid caliphs recognized that knowledge was a form of power. Their support for scholarship was deeply rooted in Islamic teachings, which emphasized the pursuit of knowledge as a divine act. The Quran and the sayings of Prophet Muhammad encouraged learning, inspiring an age of unprecedented intellectual curiosity and exploration. Cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba became bustling centers of knowledge, drawing scholars, scientists, and philosophers from all corners of the Islamic world and beyond. The Islamic Golden Age made remarkable contributions to medicine, bridging ancient traditions with new discoveries. Physicians like Al-Razi, known as Razas in the West, revolutionized clinical practices, emphasizing careful observation and evidence-based diagnosis. His comprehensive medical encyclopedia, Al-Hawi, became a cornerstone of medical education in both the Islamic world and medieval Europe. Ibn Sina, or Avicenna, further elevated the field with his monumental work, The Canon of Medicine. This encyclopedic text synthesized Greek, Roman, and Islamic medical knowledge, offering insights into anatomy, pharmacology, and treatment methods. It introduced groundbreaking diagnostic techniques and served as a standard reference in European universities for centuries, influencing medical practice well into the Renaissance. Mathematics flourished during this period, with scholars making significant advances that continue to shape modern disciplines. Al-Khwarizmi, often referred to as the father of algebra, introduced foundational concepts in his book Kitab al-Jabr, from which the term algebra is derived. His work also popularized the decimal system and the concept of zero, tools essential for modern mathematics and engineering. Astronomy, closely tied to mathematical advances, saw tremendous progress. Scholars like al-Battani refined trigonometric calculations and improved methods for predicting celestial events, knowledge that proved crucial for navigation and religious practices, such as determining the direction of Mecca. Al-Biruni accurately calculated the Earth's circumference centuries before European explorers confirmed it, while Al-Tusi developed planetary models that prefigured Copernicus's heliocentric theory. Philosophy thrived as Islamic scholars engaged with the works of ancient Greek thinkers like Plato and Aristotle. Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, and Ibn Rushd, Averroes, sought to reconcile reason and faith, grappling with questions about existence, ethics, and the nature of the universe. Ibn Rushd, in particular, became a pivotal figure in transmitting Aristotle's philosophy to Europe, where his ideas influenced medieval scholasticism, and thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. The philosophers of the Islamic Golden Age didn't merely preserve ancient knowledge, they expanded it, challenging established ideas and introducing new perspectives. Their respect for reason and empirical inquiry became hallmarks of the era, fostering a spirit of intellectual openness that transcended religious and cultural boundaries. One of the era's most enduring contributions was its role in preserving the intellectual heritage of antiquity. During a time when much of the classical world's knowledge risked being lost, Islamic scholars translated works by luminaries such as Euclid, Galen, and Hippocrates into Arabic. These translations were not mere copies. Scholars critiqued, annotated, and expanded upon these texts, creating a dynamic body of knowledge that would later be reintroduced to Europe through Latin translations. This effort wasn't limited to science and philosophy. Literature and poetry flourished as well, with works like 1001 Nights blending moral lessons with imaginative storytelling. Persian poets like Rumi explored themes of love, unity, and spirituality, crafting verses that continue to inspire readers worldwide. The achievements of the Islamic Golden Age did not remain confined to the Islamic world. Through Spain, particularly the city of Cordoba, and institutions like the School of Translators in Toledo, Arabic texts were translated into Latin, sparking a revival of intellectual activity in Europe. These translations introduced Europe to the scientific methods, mathematical theories, and philosophical ideas of Islamic scholars, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance. Figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Copernicus indirectly benefited from the insights of Islamic thinkers, who had built upon and preserved the knowledge of antiquity. The scientific revolution that followed in Europe owes much to the transmission of this intellectual heritage. The decline of the Islamic Golden Age began in the 14th century, driven by political fragmentation, the Mongol invasions, and internal strife. The sacking of Baghdad by the Mongols in 1258 dealt a devastating blow to the cultural and intellectual vibrancy of the Islamic world. However, the contributions of this era endured, shaping the development of science, medicine, and philosophy for centuries. The Islamic Golden Age serves as a testament to the power of curiosity, collaboration, and the exchange of ideas. It reminds us that knowledge knows no borders and that progress often emerges from the meeting of diverse cultures and perspectives. The achievements of this remarkable era continue to inspire, offering a vision of what humanity can accomplish when it values learning and creativity. The Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire, often overshadowed by its Roman predecessor, stands as one of history's most enduring and influential civilizations. spanning over 1,000 years from 330 CE, when Emperor Constantine the Great established Constantinople as the empire's capital. To its fall in 1453 to the Ottoman Turks, the Byzantine Empire was a bastion of resilience, intellect, and culture. Its story is one of strategic ingenuity, religious transformation, and profound influence, shaping both the ancient and modern worlds. At the core of the Byzantine Empire was Constantinople, a city strategically perched on the Bosporus Strait, where Europe meets Asia. This prime location made it a crossroads of commerce and culture, controlling vital trade routes between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Constantinople became a vibrant hub of wealth and influence, its marketplaces filled with goods from distant lands and its coffers enriched by trade tolls. The city's defenses were legendary. Encircled by massive walls that seemed impenetrable, Constantinople repelled countless sieges over the centuries. For nearly a millennium, it stood as the shining jewel of the Byzantine Empire, its skyline dominated by the magnificent Hagia Sophia. With its awe-inspiring dome and intricate mosaics, the Hagia Sophia wasn't just an architectural marvel. It was a symbol of Orthodox Christianity and Byzantine ingenuity. One of the Byzantine Empire's most defining features was its role in shaping Christianity. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity with the Edict of Milan, setting the stage for its rise as the state religion. Over time, Byzantium became the spiritual heart of Orthodox Christianity, distinct from its Western counterpart. The Great Schism of 1054 formalized this division, separating the Eastern Orthodox Church from the Roman Catholic Church and solidifying Byzantium's unique religious identity. Orthodox Christianity deeply influenced Byzantine culture. Monasticism flourished, with communities like Mount Athos becoming centers of spirituality and learning. Byzantine icons, stylized religious artworks, were revered as sacred windows to the divine, central to Orthodox worship and spirituality. These icons, adorned with gold and vivid colors, reflected the Byzantine emphasis on symbolism and transcendence. The reign of Emperor Justinian IV, 527–565 CE, marked a golden age for the Byzantine Empire. Determined to restore the glory of the Roman Empire, Justinian launched ambitious military campaigns under his brilliant general Belisarius, temporarily reclaiming parts of North Africa, Italy, and Spain. These conquests symbolized a fleeting revival of Roman dominance. However, Justinian's most enduring legacy lay not in warfare, but in law. His Corpus Juris Civilis, body of civil law, was a monumental codification of Roman law that streamlined centuries of legal traditions. This legal masterpiece became the foundation of Byzantine jurisprudence and influenced legal systems in Europe, shaping the development of civil law in modern states. Justinian also left his mark on architecture. The Hagia Sophia, commissioned during his reign, stood as a testament to Byzantine engineering and artistic brilliance. Its immense dome seemed to float above the heavens, inspiring awe in all who entered. The Byzantine Empire was a melting pot of Greco-Roman traditions and Eastern influences, forging a unique cultural identity. Its art, characterized by shimmering mosaics and religious iconography, reflected a fusion of realism and spirituality. Unlike Western art, which often aimed for lifelike depictions, Byzantine art prioritized conveying divine truths and spiritual presence. Education and scholarship thrived. Byzantine scholars preserved and expanded upon the works of ancient Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, safeguarding knowledge that might have otherwise been lost during Europe's tumultuous Middle Ages. This intellectual tradition later found its way to the Islamic world and eventually back to Europe, sparking the Renaissance and shaping modern thought. The Byzantine Empire's longevity can be attributed to its innovative military strategies and diplomatic acumen. One of its most famous weapons was Greek fire, a mysterious incendiary substance that could burn even on water, giving the Byzantines a formidable advantage in naval battles. The empire's armies, including the elite Varangian Guard, fearsome warriors of Norse and Anglo-Saxon origin, were highly trained and fiercely loyal. Equally important was the Byzantine mastery of diplomacy. Leaders skillfully played rival powers against one another, forging alliances, arranging strategic marriages, and using cunning negotiation to avoid unnecessary wars. This ability to balance force with diplomacy allowed Byzantium to survive for centuries, even as Western Europe descended into feudal chaos. Despite its resilience, the Byzantine Empire faced relentless challenges. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 was a devastating blow. Originally intended to reclaim Jerusalem, the Crusaders turned their attention to Constantinople, sacking the city and dividing its wealth. For decades, Constantinople remained under Latin control, and even after the Byzantines recaptured it, the empire was weakened beyond repair. By the 14th century, the Ottoman Turks emerged as a powerful force, steadily encroaching on Byzantine territory. In 1453, under Sultan Mehmed II, the Ottomans launched a final siege of Constantinople. Despite fierce resistance, the city fell, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire. The fall of Constantinople was a watershed moment, symbolizing the end of the medieval era and the rise of the Ottoman Empire. Though the Byzantine Empire fell, its influence endures. Its preservation of Greek and Roman knowledge laid the intellectual foundation for the Renaissance. Byzantine religious traditions continue to shape Orthodox Christian nations like Russia, Greece, and Serbia. Its art and architecture, from mosaics to domed cathedrals, remain celebrated as pinnacles of human creativity. The Byzantine Empire was more than a bridge between the ancient and modern worlds. It was a civilization that forged its own identity, blending East and West into a unique cultural mosaic. Its story is one of resilience, adaptation, and profound influence, a testament to the enduring power of culture and intellect. Even centuries after its fall, Byzantium's legacy continues to illuminate the paths of history. The feudal system in medieval Europe. The feudal system was the framework of medieval European society, a web of interdependence that governed land, power, and daily life for centuries. It emerged in the wake of the Roman Empire's collapse, when Europe fractured into a mosaic of territories ruled by local warlords. In the absence of centralized authority, survival depended on mutual obligations, an intricate human chain where kings, lords, knights, and peasants each played their part. Imagine a massive puzzle, each piece vital to the whole, yet each shaped by its unique role. After the fall of Rome in the 5th century, chaos reigned. Without the stability of Roman governance, marauding invaders, economic decline, and constant threats made life unpredictable. Local rulers, often warlords with armies, seized control of fragmented regions, offering protection in exchange for allegiance. This arrangement soon evolved into a formalized system. Feudalism. Land, or fiefs, became the currency of power granted by kings or powerful lords in exchange for loyalty and military service. Unlike modern ownership, this land was not held outright, but loaned under strict conditions, forming the backbone of a society rooted in land-based wealth. Feudal society resembled a pyramid. At the top sat the king, theoretically owning all the land. Beneath him were the powerful lords and barons, who were granted vast estates in return for their allegiance. These lords further subdivided their land to knights, who pledged to defend their domains. At the base of the pyramid were the peasants and serfs, who toiled on the land to sustain the entire system. This hierarchy was bound by a network of mutual obligations. The king granted protection and authority to the lords provided knights to fight for the king, and the peasants worked the land to feed everyone above them. The daily life of a serf, the backbone of this system, was grueling and unrelenting. Though not slaves, serfs were tied to the land, unable to leave without their lord's permission. They worked the fields from sunrise to sunset, plowing, planting, and harvesting crops. In return, they were promised protection from invaders, a critical assurance in an era marked by frequent raids and violence. Serfs paid their lords with a portion of their harvest, performed additional labor on the lord's personal lands, and faced taxes and fees for using communal resources like mills or ovens. Though their lives were marked by hardship, the feudal system offered them a semblance of stability in an otherwise perilous world. Above the serfs stood the knights, the armored enforcers of feudal law. Trained from boyhood in the arts of combat, horsemanship, and weaponry, knights were both warriors and symbols of feudal values. Their loyalty to their lord was cemented through ceremonies of fealty, where they knelt and swore an oath of service. Knights didn't merely fight, they embodied the chivalric ideal, bravery in battle, protection of the weak, and devotion to God. Though the reality often fell short of the ideal, chivalry offered a moral framework that upheld the feudal order. The lords who ruled over their fiefs held both economic and judicial power. They oversaw their estates, managed disputes, and ensured the productivity of their lands. Yet they too were vassals, bound by oaths of loyalty to kings or more powerful overlords. This web of vassalage created a chain of interdependence, with each link reinforcing the other. The bond of fealty was sacrosanct. Breaking it was seen as a grave betrayal that could upend the delicate balance of power. At the pinnacle of this hierarchy stood the king, a figure of ultimate authority, but often limited by the realities of his dependence on the loyalty of his vassals. While the king technically owned all the land, his power relied on the cooperation of the lords who governed vast territories on his behalf. A weak king could find his authority undermined by ambitious barons, while a strong king could unify his realm and wield significant influence. Feudalism wasn't just about survival. It was also about order. The system provided a structured response to the chaos of the early medieval period, creating a predictable framework of mutual obligations. Yet this rigidity also sowed the seeds of its eventual decline. By the 14th century, shifts in economics, technology, and society began to unravel the feudal web. The Black Death devastated Europe's population, creating labor shortages that empowered serfs to demand better conditions or freedom. Trade expanded, and the rise of towns and cities shifted wealth and power away from rural manors. Meanwhile, the invention of gunpowder and professional armies diminished the military role of knights, eroding one of feudalism's central pillars. Centralized monarchies began to eclipse the power of feudal lords, consolidating authority in the hands of kings and paving the way for nation-states. By the time of the Renaissance, feudalism had largely faded, replaced by economies and societies driven by trade, urban centers, and monetary wealth. Yet feudalism's influence persisted. Its hierarchical structure shaped European societies for centuries, leaving echoes in notions of loyalty, service, and governance. The concepts of mutual obligation and duty that defined feudal relationships can still be seen in modern legal systems and cultural traditions. Feudalism was more than a social order. It was a response to the challenges of its time, creating a network of interdependence in a fragmented world. The feudal system may seem distant, a relic of a bygone era, but it remains a testament to humanity's ability to adapt and organize in the face of adversity. Its legacy is woven into the fabric of Western civilization, offering insights into the foundations of modern society. Feudalism was a world built on trust, loyalty, and the shared need for survival, a system that thrived in the chaos and gave shape to the medieval world. The Crusades. The Crusades were a sweeping and turbulent saga of faith, ambition, and conflict that shaped medieval Europe and the Middle East for centuries. These religious wars primarily fought between European Christians and Muslim forces over control of the Holy Land, particularly Jerusalem, were anything but simple. Spanning from 1096 to the late 13th century, the Crusades were driven by a mix of piety, political maneuvering, and personal ambition. They left behind a legacy of cultural exchange, economic growth, and enduring animosities that continue to shape the world today. The stage was set in the 11th century, a time of upheaval and opportunity. Europe was fragmented into feuding kingdoms, while the Muslim world, though often divided, controlled Jerusalem, a city sacred to Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. Against this backdrop, Pope Urban II issued a fiery call to arms at the Council of Clermont in 1095. His words electrified Europe, framing the campaign as a holy mission to reclaim Christian lands and promising spiritual rewards, even eternal salvation, to those who joined. This rallying cry unified disparate factions under a common cause, igniting a fervor that swept through knights, nobles, and peasants alike. The First Crusade, launched in 1096, was both a staggering success and a brutal testament to the complexities of the movement. Tens of thousands of crusaders embarked on a grueling journey across Europe and the Middle East, driven by faith, the lure of adventure, and the hope of eternal glory. Their march was marked by starvation, disease, and conflict, but they pressed on. In 1099, they achieved the unthinkable, the capture of Jerusalem. Yet their victory came at a terrible cost. Historical accounts describe a massacre of Muslim and Jewish inhabitants that left the city drenched in blood, setting the tone for centuries of interfaith tension. The Crusaders established Christian states, known as the Crusader states, to maintain their foothold in the Holy Land, but these territories would remain fragile and contested. The initial triumph of the First Crusade was difficult to replicate. In 1147, the Second Crusade was launched in response to the Muslim recapture of Edessa, one of the Crusader states. Despite immense resources and support, the campaign ended in failure, plagued by poor leadership, disunity among European forces, and the strategic resilience of Muslim defenders. The stark contrast between the triumph of the First Crusade and the debacle of the Second highlighted the unpredictability and complexity of these conflicts. The Third Crusade, beginning in 1189, brought together some of the most legendary figures of the medieval world. It was sparked by the recapture of Jerusalem by Saladin, the charismatic and brilliant Muslim leader who united much of the Islamic world against the Crusaders. Facing him were Europe's most powerful monarchs, including Richard the Lionheart of England. The rivalry between Richard and Saladin became the stuff of legend, marked by epic battles and mutual respect. While Richard achieved notable victories, he ultimately failed to retake Jerusalem. Instead, a truce was brokered in 1192, allowing Christian pilgrims access to the city while leaving it under Muslim control. A bittersweet conclusion to a campaign marked by heroism and heartbreak. The Fourth Crusade, launched in 1202, revealed the shifting motivations and moral complexities of the Crusades. Initially intended to reclaim Jerusalem, the Crusaders instead turned their sights on Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. Driven by political intrigue and financial pressures, they sacked the city in 1204, looting its treasures and leaving a once mighty Christian ally in ruins. This betrayal deepened the rift between the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches and marked a dramatic departure from the original goals of the Crusades. While the Crusades ultimately failed to establish lasting Christian control over the Holy Land, their impact reverberated far beyond the battlefield. The movement opened up new trade routes and facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies between Europe and the Middle East. European crusaders encountered advanced Muslim knowledge in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. Sparking intellectual curiosity, that would help lay the groundwork for the Renaissance. Spices, textiles, and other luxuries from the East flowed into European markets, transforming economies and cultures. However, the Crusades also left deep scars. The violence committed in the name of faith entrenched animosities between Christians and Muslims that persisted for centuries. Jewish communities in Europe were frequently targeted by crusaders en route to the Holy Land, leading to horrific massacres and fueling anti-Semitism. The sacking of Constantinople fractured Christendom, creating divisions that remain evident today. The Crusades also reshaped European society. Many feudal lords who joined the campaigns never returned, allowing kings to consolidate power and lay the foundations for centralized monarchies. The experience of large-scale warfare led to innovations in military tactics and castle construction, while the cultural exchanges of the era enriched art, literature, and intellectual life. Ultimately, the Crusades were far more than a clash of religions. They were a complex web of human motivations and consequences. What began as a singular call to reclaim sacred lands evolved into a series of campaigns driven by a mix of faith, greed, ambition, and desperation. The Crusades remind us of the power of ideas to inspire extraordinary feats and devastating atrocities, and of the ways in which ideals can be both a guiding light and a dangerous weapon. Their legacy is a cautionary tale and a source of reflection. The Crusades were not a simple battle of good versus evil, but a multifaceted saga of humanity, striving and often failing to reconcile its highest aspirations with its basest impulses. Through their triumphs and tragedies, they reveal the enduring complexity of human history and the intricate interplay of faith, power, and ambition. The Mongol Empire and Genghis Khan. The story of the Mongol Empire, one of the largest and most transformative empires in history, begins on the vast windswept steppes of Mongolia. It is a tale of resilience, ambition, and vision, centered on a man who rose from humble beginnings to reshape the world. Born as Temujin in 1162, this boy from a harsh and unforgiving land would grow into Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, forging an empire that spanned continents and redefined the flow of history. Temujin's early life was marked by relentless adversity. His father, a tribal chieftain, was poisoned by rivals when Temujin was just a child, leaving his family abandoned and vulnerable. Stripped of their status, Temujin, his siblings, and his mother, Hoelun, struggled to survive on the barren steppes, often battling starvation and the constant threat of enemy tribes. These formative years forged in him an unbreakable will and an acute understanding of loyalty and leadership. From these harsh beginnings, Temujin learned to think beyond the narrow confines of tribal alliances. Unlike many leaders of his time who relied solely on family ties or bloodlines, Temujin valued merit, loyalty, and ability. He began to attract a small but fiercely devoted group of followers, united not by kinship but by a shared belief in his vision. Slowly, he started to unify the fractious Mongol tribes, overcoming centuries-old rivalries and ingrained distrust. This unification was not merely a consolidation of power, it was a revolution in the way the Mongols saw themselves, not as divided clans, but as one people with a shared destiny. By 1206, after years of warfare, diplomacy, and alliances, Temujin achieved what had once seemed impossible: the unification of the Mongol tribes. He was declared Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, marking the birth of the Mongol Empire. This moment was not just a turning point for the Mongols, but for the entire world. Genghis Khan transformed his people from scattered nomadic tribes into a disciplined and cohesive military machine. He abolished tribal feuds, implemented laws to ensure order, and prioritized loyalty and merit over birthright, a radical shift that set his empire apart. The Mongol army under Genghis Khan's leadership was unlike anything the world had seen. It was fast, adaptable, and devastatingly effective. Mongol warriors, mounted on swift horses, could travel vast distances with incredible speed, often surprising their enemies. Their expertise in horseback archery made them deadly and precise, while their innovative use of intelligence networks allowed them to outmaneuver and outthink opponents. Genghis Khan also employed psychological warfare, spreading fear through tales of Mongol brutality to encourage surrender without a fight. Yet Genghis Khan was more than a conqueror. He was a pragmatic and astute ruler. While his military campaigns were often marked by brutal efficiency, his approach to governance was surprisingly progressive for its time. He embraced diversity, allowing conquered peoples to practice their religions freely and often incorporating local customs and expertise into his administration. For example, after conquering the Khwarezmian Empire in Persia, he adopted aspects of its bureaucratic systems, enhancing the efficiency of Mongol rule. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan's empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, encompassing much of Central Asia and parts of China. But the Mongol conquests did not end with him. His successors expanded the empire even further, pushing into Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. Under their rule, the Mongol Empire facilitated an unprecedented era of cultural, technological, and economic exchange across continents. This period, often referred to as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, brought stability to vast regions of Asia and Europe. The Mongols safeguarded trade routes, particularly the Silk Road, creating an interconnected world where goods, ideas, and technologies flowed freely. Silk, spices, and precious metals moved westward, while innovations such as papermaking, printing, and gunpowder traveled eastward. Even diseases, including the Black Death, spread along these routes, illustrating the profound and far-reaching effects of the Mongol network. The Mongol Empire's influence extended beyond trade. In China, the Mongols established the Yuan dynasty, blending Mongol and Chinese traditions. In Persia, they revitalized cities and fostered the flourishing of Islamic art and science. In Russia, their governance left a lasting imprint on political structures. Their acceptance of diverse religions was equally impactful, fostering a level of religious tolerance that was rare for the time and allowing communities of Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, and others to coexist under Mongol rule. Despite their achievements, the Mongols' legacy is deeply complex. Genghis Khan and his armies are remembered for their ruthless conquests, which often involved widespread destruction and loss of life. Entire cities were razed and populations were displaced, leaving scars that endured for generations. Yet the same empire that instilled fear also connected disparate worlds, fostering exchanges that enriched civilizations and propelled humanity forward. The Mongol Empire eventually fragmented, weakened by internal divisions and the challenges of governing such a vast and diverse territory. By the late 14th century, its influence had waned, but its impact remained indelible. Genghis Khan's vision of unity and expansion reshaped the political, cultural, and economic landscapes of Asia, Europe, and beyond. Genghis Khan remains one of history's most polarizing figures. For some, he is a symbol of unbridled conquest and destruction. For others, he is a visionary leader who forged connections between distant worlds and championed principles of merit and tolerance that were ahead of his time. The empire he built was not merely a collection of conquered lands, but a dynamic force that bridged civilizations, reshaping the course of history. The story of Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire is a testament to the transformative power of vision and resilience. From a boy surviving on the harsh steppes to a ruler who commanded the largest contiguous empire in history, Genghis Khan's journey illustrates the extraordinary heights humanity can achieve when driven by determination and ambition. His legacy, both inspiring and cautionary, serves as a reminder of how the past continues to echo in the present, shaping the world we know today. The Renaissance in Europe. The Renaissance, meaning rebirth, was a dazzling period in European history, spanning roughly from the 14th to the 17th century. It marked a profound cultural and intellectual awakening, a time when Europe emerged from the so-called darkness of the Middle Ages into an era of unparalleled creativity, scientific discovery, and philosophical exploration. This transformative age redefined art, science, politics, and human thought, laying the foundations for the modern world and placing humanity itself at the center of inquiry and innovation. The Renaissance was born in the vibrant city-states of northern Italy, with Florence serving as its beating heart. In the 14th century, Florence was not just a hub of commerce and trade, but also a crucible of ideas and ambition. Its wealthy merchant families, most famously the Medici, wielded their immense fortunes to patronize artists, architects, and scholars. They saw art and knowledge not merely as pursuits of beauty or utility, but as a way to immortalize their legacy and elevate their society. This patronage created fertile ground for a cultural explosion that would ripple across Europe. What ignited this rebirth was a rediscovery of the classical wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome. During the Middle Ages, much of this knowledge had faded from European memory, preserved instead in Islamic libraries and Byzantine archives. As these texts re-emerged, brought back through trade, conquest, and scholarly exchange, they rekindled a fascination with the human experience. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, poets like Virgil, and orators like Cicero became guides for a new generation of thinkers eager to explore human potential and the natural world. This revival of classical ideas gave rise to humanism, a movement that celebrated human achievement, dignity, and reason. Art became the most visible manifestation of the Renaissance spirit, breaking away from the rigid, symbolic styles of the Middle Ages to embrace realism, perspective, and emotion. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael revolutionized their craft, producing works that captured the complexities of the human form and spirit. Michelangelo's David, carved from a single block of marble, became an emblem of human strength and beauty, while his Sistine Chapel ceiling brought biblical stories to life with unparalleled grandeur. Leonardo da Vinci epitomized the Renaissance ideal of the Homo universale, or universal man. He was not only a painter, but also an inventor, scientist, and anatomist. In his sketches, you see the boundless curiosity of a mind seeking to understand both the mechanics of flight and the secrets of the human body. His Vitruvian Man, a study of ideal proportions, symbolized the Renaissance belief in the harmony between art, science, and nature. Leonardo's notebooks, filled with designs for machines centuries ahead of their time, stand as a testament to the visionary scope of Renaissance thought. The Renaissance was not confined to art. It was an age of scientific daring when long-held beliefs were questioned and the universe was reimagined. Nicholas Copernicus shattered the geocentric model of the cosmos, proposing instead that the Earth orbited the Sun, a radical idea that upended centuries of religious and scientific doctrine. Galileo Galilei, armed with his telescope, confirmed Copernicus's theory and expanded humanity's understanding of the stars, despite fierce opposition from the Church. These breakthroughs symbolized a seismic shift, the pursuit of truth through observation and reason rather than tradition and dogma. One invention more than any other propelled Renaissance ideas far and wide: the printing press. Johannes Gutenberg's revolutionary device, introduced around 1440, democratized knowledge by making books affordable and accessible. Before its invention, manuscripts were painstakingly copied by hand, making them rare and expensive treasures. With the printing press, texts on philosophy, science, and art could reach audiences across Europe, fueling literacy, debate, and innovation. It also amplified the voices of dissenters like Martin Luther, whose 95 Theses ignited the Protestant Reformation, challenging the authority of the Catholic Church and reshaping Europe's religious landscape. At the core of the Renaissance was a shift in worldview. While the Middle Ages had been deeply centered on divine authority and the afterlife, the Renaissance celebrated life on earth. Humanism championed the study of history, literature, and ethics, arguing that understanding the human condition was as noble a pursuit as understanding the divine. Figures like Petrarch, often called the father of humanism, encouraged individuals to seek wisdom and virtue through personal reflection and classical learning. This philosophical shift was mirrored in art, which began to depict humanity in all its complexity, from the serene divinity of Raphael's Madonnas to the raw emotion in Michelangelo's Pietà. The Renaissance's impact was not limited to Italy. From Florence, its ideas spread across Europe, influencing artists like Albrecht Dürer in Germany, writers like William Shakespeare in England, and architects like Christopher Wren. Each region interpreted the Renaissance through its own cultural lens, creating a mosaic of innovation that spanned continents. In Northern Europe, Renaissance art often combined meticulous realism with moral and religious themes, while writers like Shakespeare explored the depths of human nature with unparalleled eloquence. The Renaissance did not end abruptly but evolved, laying the groundwork for the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution. Its emphasis on reason, inquiry, and the value of the individual would shape modern democracy, science, and education. It shifted the center of knowledge from religious institutions to human observation and creativity, fostering the secular and individualistic values that define much of Western culture today. The Renaissance is more than a historical period. It is a reminder of humanity's boundless capacity for reinvention. It teaches us that even in times of upheaval, creativity and curiosity can spark profound change. From its origins in the bustling city-states of Italy to its spread across Europe, the Renaissance remains a beacon of human potential, celebrating the power of art, science, and ideas to transform the world. Its legacy is etched not only in marble and canvas, but in the very fabric of modern thought, a testament to the enduring brilliance of a time when humanity dared to rediscover itself. The Age of Exploration. The Age of Exploration, spanning from the 15th to the 17th centuries, was a transformative chapter in human history, a time when the boundaries of the known world expanded dramatically, fueled by ambition, curiosity, and the pursuit of power. It was an era of daring voyages across uncharted oceans that reshaped civilizations, economies, and cultures, leaving behind a legacy as complex as it was profound. The driving force behind this era was Europe's hunger for new trade routes. For centuries, the Silk Road had connected Europe to the wealth of Asia, bringing spices, silk, and other exotic goods. But by the 15th century, the rise of the Ottoman Empire had blocked many of these overland routes, forcing European nations to seek alternatives. The dream of reaching the fabled riches of India and China spurred a maritime revolution that would change the course of history. Portugal, a small but ambitious maritime nation, led the charge. Under the guidance of Prince Henry the Navigator, a patron of exploration, Portuguese sailors charted new paths down the western coast of Africa, dreaming of reaching the Indian Ocean. In 1488, Bartolomeu Dias achieved a historic breakthrough by rounding the Cape of Good Hope at Africa's southern tip. A decade later, Vasco da Gama completed the journey to India, establishing Portugal as a dominant force in the lucrative spice trade. Meanwhile, Spain pursued a different vision. Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer, believed he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic. Backed by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain, Columbus set sail in 1492 and landed in the Bahamas, unaware that he had stumbled upon a new continent. His voyage marked the beginning of a profound transformation as Europe and the Americas collided, reshaping the fate of both worlds. The consequences of Columbus's journey were far-reaching and often devastating. The Spanish conquistadors who followed in his wake, like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, toppled powerful indigenous empires such as the Aztecs and Incas. These conquests brought vast wealth to Spain, but also unleashed catastrophic consequences for the native populations, who suffered from warfare, enslavement, and diseases like smallpox, which decimated entire communities. This era of exploration was made possible by groundbreaking advancements in technology. The invention of the caravel, a nimble and maneuverable ship, allowed explorers to sail further and more effectively than ever before. Navigational tools like the astrolabe and the magnetic compass enabled sailors to determine their position and direction, reducing the risks of long ocean voyages. These innovations transformed the oceans from barriers into highways, connecting continents and cultures in ways previously unimaginable. Among the most significant outcomes of the Age of Exploration was the Columbian Exchange, a vast and complex transfer of plants, animals, people, and ideas between the Old and New Worlds. Crops like potatoes, maize, and tomatoes, native to the Americas, became staples in Europe, Asia, and Africa, revolutionizing diets and agriculture. In return, Old World crops such as wheat, sugarcane, and coffee were introduced to the Americas, along with livestock like horses and cattle, which transformed indigenous ways of life. Yet the Columbian Exchange also carried a darker side. Diseases like smallpox, influenza, and measles, brought unwittingly by European explorers, ravaged indigenous populations in the Americas, causing one of the most devastating demographic collapses in history. Entire societies were irreversibly altered, their cultures disrupted, and their lands colonized. The race for exploration and colonization intensified as other European powers, including England, France, and the Netherlands, entered the fray. Spain and Portugal, early leaders in exploration, had divided the world between them in 1494 through the Treaty of Tordesillas, mediated by the Pope. But this division could not contain the ambitions of rival nations. By the 17th century, European powers were competing fiercely for control of trade routes, colonies, and resources, fueling conflicts and shaping the geopolitical map of the modern world. The Age of Exploration also sparked intellectual revolutions. As explorers charted unknown lands and encountered diverse cultures, they expanded the collective understanding of geography, biology, and anthropology. European maps grew more accurate, and curiosity about the natural world deepened, laying the groundwork for the scientific revolution. However, the era's darker legacies cannot be overlooked. The exploitation of indigenous peoples, the destruction of their civilizations, and the transatlantic slave trade are stark reminders of the human cost of exploration. The labor demands of European colonies gave rise to a brutal system of slavery, forcibly transporting millions of Africans across the Atlantic, a legacy of suffering that continues to reverberate through history. The Age of Exploration was not just a time of discovery, it was a time of transformation. It brought about a more interconnected world, establishing global trade networks and cultural exchanges that would shape the modern era. The era's explorers expanded the limits of human knowledge and ambition, proving that the world was far larger and far more interconnected than anyone had imagined. But this interconnectedness came at a price. It was an age of wonder and conquest, innovation and exploitation, curiosity and cruelty. The Age of Exploration reminds us of the dual nature of human progress, the incredible heights of achievement we can reach, and the devastating consequences of our ambitions when they go unchecked. It is a story of humanity's unquenchable thirst to know and to conquer, a testament to both our brilliance and our flaws, echoing through the centuries as a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration. The Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation was a seismic shift in European history, a movement that redefined religion, politics, and culture during the 16th century. What began as a theological debate quickly escalated into a revolution, challenging the immense power of the Catholic Church and reshaping the fabric of Western civilization. At its core was a radical call for reform, but its ripple effects extended far beyond religion, touching every aspect of society and setting the stage for modernity. For centuries, the Catholic Church stood as the spiritual and political cornerstone of Europe, wielding authority over kings and commoners alike. But by the early 1500s, cracks were beginning to show in its edifice. Many Europeans were deeply troubled by the perceived corruption within the Church. Clergy were criticized for their wealth and opulence, and practices like the sale of indulgences, essentially payments for the forgiveness of sins, sparked outrage. For the faithful, it felt as though salvation itself had been commodified, and doubts began to grow about whether the Church could truly guide them towards spiritual redemption. It was in this climate of discontent that Martin Luther, a German monk and theology professor, emerged. Luther was a deeply introspective man, often tormented by questions of sin and salvation. As he delved into the Bible, he came to a revolutionary conclusion. Salvation was not something to be earned through good works or purchased through indulgences. Instead, it was a gift of grace, attainable through faith alone. This idea, solified or faith alone, would become the cornerstone of his challenge to the Church. On October 31, 1517, Luther took a bold step that would ignite a movement. He nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Church, a public declaration of his grievances against the Church's practices. These theses questioned the authority of the Pope, condemned the sale of indulgences, and called for a return to Scripture as the ultimate source of truth. Thanks to the recent invention of the printing press, Luther's ideas spread rapidly, sparking debates and gaining followers across Germany and beyond. At the heart of Luther's message was the concept of sola scriptura, Scripture alone. He argued that the Bible, not the Pope or church tradition, was the ultimate authority in matters of faith. This was a radical notion, as it suggested that every individual had the right to read and interpret Scripture for themselves. By empowering believers to seek their own relationship with God, Luther dismantled the hierarchical structure that had long defined the Catholic Church. Luther's ideas resonated deeply with many, but they also posed an existential threat to the Church. His teachings undermined the Church's monopoly on spiritual authority, and his growing influence prompted swift backlash. In 1521, he was summoned to the Diet of Worms, a council convened by Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, and ordered to recant his views. Luther refused, famously declaring, "Here I stand, I can do no other." Branded a heretic, he was excommunicated, but by then his movement had gained too much momentum to be silenced. What began as a religious dispute quickly evolved into a broader social and political revolution. Across Europe, secular leaders saw Luther's ideas as an opportunity to assert their independence from the Catholic Church. In Germany, many princes embraced Protestantism, not just for its theological appeal, but as a means to seize church lands and consolidate power. This alignment between Protestant reformers and secular rulers ensured the movement's survival and expansion. But the Reformation also unleashed chaos and conflict. The religious divide sparked violent clashes between Catholics and Protestants, culminating in wars that devastated entire regions. The Peasants' War in Germany, inspired in part by Reformation ideals, saw thousands of peasants rise up against oppressive feudal lords, demanding greater social and economic equality. Luther, though initially sympathetic to their grievances, ultimately condemned the uprising, leading to its brutal suppression. As Protestantism spread, the Catholic Church launched its own reform efforts, known as the Counter-Reformation. The Council of Trent, 1545-1563, sought to address corruption, reaffirm Catholic doctrine, and counter the spread of Protestantism. New religious orders, such as the Jesuits, emerged as dynamic forces for Catholic renewal, focusing on education, missionary work, and the defense of Catholic orthodoxy. The Reformation's impact extended far beyond the religious sphere. It shattered the religious unity of Europe, giving rise to a patchwork of Protestant and Catholic states. It also fueled a surge in literacy and education as the emphasis on reading the Bible encouraged the establishment of schools and the spread of printed materials. The power of the printing press became undeniable, demonstrating how technology could amplify ideas and challenge established authority. Culturally, the Reformation encouraged individualism and personal responsibility, values that would later influence the Enlightenment and the rise of democratic thought. The movement's emphasis on questioning authority and seeking truth resonated far beyond the confines of theology, shaping modern concepts of freedom and human rights. The Protestant Reformation remains one of history's most transformative events. It was a moment of profound spiritual and social upheaval, marked by both incredible achievements and devastating conflicts. It challenged long-held assumptions, redefined the relationship between the individual and authority, and laid the groundwork for a more pluralistic and diverse Europe. In hindsight, the Reformation serves as a testament to the power of ideas and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of institutional dominance. Martin Luther's defiance in Wittenberg was not just a stand against indulgences. It was a call for a more personal and authentic faith, a challenge to the status quo, and a catalyst for change that continues to shape the world today. The Scientific Revolution. The Scientific Revolution was one of the most profound transformations in human history, spanning the 16th to 18th centuries. It marked a seismic shift in the way people understood the universe and their place within it. This era shattered the old reliance on dogma and tradition, replacing it with a new approach driven by observation, experimentation, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The revolution redefined humanity's relationship with knowledge, ushering in a world governed by reason and evidence, and laying the foundation for modern science. Before this intellectual awakening, much of Europe's understanding of the natural world was rooted in ancient Greek philosophy and religious teachings. Aristotle's view of an earth-centered universe where celestial bodies moved in perfect divine circles had been embraced for centuries. This geocentric model, endorsed by the Catholic Church, placed humanity at the literal and figurative center of creation. It was a comforting worldview, but one that left little room for questioning or exploration. Truth was seen as fixed, eternal, and best understood through the interpretations of established authorities. But the seeds of change were already being planted. The Renaissance had revived an interest in classical learning, encouraging people to look beyond inherited wisdom. The rediscovery of ancient texts, coupled with the advances made during the Islamic Golden Age, began to stir curiosity about the natural world. Slowly, a shift began, a move away from accepting what was told, toward asking what could be proven. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus, a Polish mathematician and astronomer, published De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. In it, he proposed a revolutionary idea. What if the Earth was not at the center of the universe? Instead, he suggested a heliocentric model, where the Sun was at the center, with the Earth and other planets orbiting around it. This concept was a radical departure from centuries of belief, challenging both scientific and theological orthodoxy. While his theory lacked the observational evidence to convince many at the time, it set the stage for others to explore and expand upon his ideas. The next giant leap came from Galileo Galilei, an Italian polymath who transformed the way people observed the heavens. In 1609, Galileo built a telescope that allowed him to peer into the cosmos with unprecedented clarity. What he saw was astonishing. Moons orbiting Jupiter, proving that not all celestial objects revolved around the Earth. The phases of Venus, which confirmed the heliocentric model. And the moon's surface, revealed to be rough and cratered, rather than the perfect sphere imagined by earlier thinkers. Galileo's meticulous observations, published in Sidereus Nuncius, Starry Messenger, struck a blow to the geocentric model and demonstrated the power of evidence-based inquiry. But Galileo's discoveries came at a cost. His findings contradicted the teachings of the Catholic Church, which clung to the earth-centered universe as a cornerstone of its doctrine. In 1633, he was tried by the Inquisition and forced to recant his views, spending the rest of his life under house arrest. Yet his work inspired a generation of scientists to question authority and trust their observations. Johannes Kepler, a German mathematician and astronomer, pushed the revolution further by uncovering the laws of planetary motion. Using data collected by his mentor, Tycho Brahe, Kepler demonstrated that planets moved in elliptical orbits rather than perfect circles. This was more than a mathematical breakthrough. It shattered the notion of a universe governed by divine perfection. Kepler's work introduced the idea that the cosmos operated according to precise, measurable laws, setting the stage for a deeper understanding of motion and gravity. The culmination of these efforts came with Isaac Newton, whose contributions synthesized the discoveries of the scientific revolution into a coherent framework. In 1687, Newton published Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, a monumental work that outlined his laws of motion and universal gravitation. Newton's insights revealed that the same force pulling an apple to the ground governed the orbits of planets around the sun. For the first time, humanity understood that the heavens and the earth were part of the same physical system, governed by universal principles that could be expressed through mathematics. The impact of Newton's work was staggering. It united centuries of fragmented observations and theories into a single vision of the universe as an ordered, predictable system. Newton's laws became the foundation for modern physics and exemplified the power of the scientific method, a disciplined approach that relied on observation, experimentation, and reasoning to uncover truth. The scientific revolution didn't just transform our understanding of the cosmos, it redefined the way humanity approached knowledge itself. The idea that truth could be discovered, tested, and refined through evidence marked a dramatic departure from the reliance on authority and tradition that had dominated for centuries. This shift empowered individuals to question, to experiment, and to explore, fostering a spirit of inquiry that would fuel innovations in medicine, engineering, chemistry, and countless other fields. It also democratized knowledge. The invention of the printing press played a critical role, making books and scientific ideas accessible to a broader audience. Scientists began publishing their findings, creating networks of correspondence that transcended borders and languages. Knowledge was no longer the exclusive domain of the elite. It became something that anyone with curiosity and discipline could pursue. The legacy of the scientific revolution is profound. It ignited the Enlightenment, inspired the Industrial Revolution, and continues to shape the modern world. It revealed a universe governed not by mystical forces, but by laws that could be understood and harnessed. It taught humanity to embrace skepticism, to value evidence over assumption, and to see knowledge not as a fixed truth, but as a journey of endless discovery. In many ways, the scientific revolution was humanity's first step into the modern era. It redefined what it meant to seek truth and revealed a cosmos far grander, more intricate, and more fascinating than anyone had imagined. Its story reminds us of the power of curiosity and the extraordinary progress that can arise when we dare to question the unknown. The Enlightenment Era. The Enlightenment Era, often called the Age of Enlightenment, was a transformative period that reshaped the way humanity viewed the world, spanning from the late 17th to the late 18th century. It was a time when the power of reason illuminated the darkness of ignorance and tradition, challenging entrenched dogmas and sparking revolutions in thought, governance, and society. This intellectual awakening not only questioned long-standing authorities, but also laid the foundation for modern democracy, human rights, and scientific progress, marking a profound shift in the trajectory of Western civilization. The roots of the Enlightenment can be traced to the fertile intellectual soil of the scientific revolution. Thinkers like Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei had demonstrated that the universe operated according to discoverable laws, sparking a newfound confidence in reason and observation. Inspired by these scientific breakthroughs, philosophers and intellectuals of the Enlightenment sought to apply the same principles of inquiry and logic to human society, governance, and morality. They believed that through reason and evidence, humanity could improve itself and its institutions, breaking free from the chains of superstition and authoritarianism. Central to the Enlightenment was the idea that human reason was the primary source of knowledge and progress. This marked a radical departure from the past, where divine authority and rigid tradition often dictated truth. Enlightenment thinkers, known as philosophes, argued that individuals could and should seek truth through critical thinking and empirical evidence. This conviction was both liberating and provocative, as it directly challenged the dominance of monarchies and the Church, which had long served as the arbiters of knowledge and power. René Descartes, often regarded as the father of modern philosophy, embodied this spirit of intellectual independence. His famous declaration, "Cogito, ergo sum," I think, therefore I am, placed human thought at the center of existence. By questioning established truths and emphasizing doubt as a tool for discovery, Descartes laid the philosophical foundation for the Enlightenment's focus on individual inquiry and skepticism. Equally influential was John Locke, whose ideas about government and human rights would ripple through history. In his two treatises of government, Locke proposed that all individuals are born with inherent rights to life, liberty, and property. He argued that governments derive their legitimacy from the consent of the governed and exist solely to protect these rights. These revolutionary ideas challenged the divine right of kings and inspired movements for democracy and self-governance, particularly in the American and French revolutions. Voltaire, the brilliant and sharp-tongued satirist, emerged as one of the Enlightenment's most prominent voices, a relentless critic of institutionalized religion and political tyranny. Voltaire championed freedom of speech, religious tolerance, and civil liberties. His wit and piercing critiques exposed the hypocrisies of the powerful, making him a symbol of the Enlightenment's commitment to truth and justice. His famous quip, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," encapsulates the era's belief in the sanctity of free expression. Another towering figure, Montesquieu, advanced the concept of the separation of powers in government. In his seminal work, The Spirit of the Laws, he argued that dividing authority among legislative, executive, and judicial branches would prevent tyranny and safeguard individual freedoms. Montesquieu's ideas profoundly influenced the structure of modern democracies, including the United States Constitution. The Enlightenment wasn't confined to philosophy. It also ignited revolutions in education and knowledge dissemination. Denis Diderot's ambitious project, Encyclopédie, sought to compile and share the breadth of human knowledge, making it accessible to a wider audience. This monumental work reflected the Enlightenment's belief that education was the key to progress and that knowledge should not be hoarded by elites, but shared with all. While the Enlightenment celebrated reason and progress, it was not without contradictions. Many Enlightenment thinkers failed to extend their ideals of liberty and equality to women, enslaved people, and indigenous populations. For instance, while Rousseau championed individual freedom and direct democracy, his views on women were often regressive, relegating them to domestic roles. However, figures like Mary Wollstonecraft emerged during this time to challenge these limitations. In her groundbreaking work, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, Wollstonecraft argued for gender equality and the importance of education for women, planting the seeds of modern feminist thought. The Enlightenment also grappled with the tension between reason and emotion. While it celebrated rationality as the pathway to truth, it sometimes undervalued the role of human emotion, imagination, and spirituality. This tension would later give rise to Romanticism, a movement that sought to balance the Enlightenment's focus on reason with an appreciation for the emotional and the sublime. The political impact of the Enlightenment was immense. In America, the ideas of Locke, Montesquieu, and others inspired the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, creating a new nation built on principles of liberty and democracy. Across the Atlantic, the French Revolution erupted, fueled by the works of Rousseau, Voltaire, and Diderot. These revolutions were not merely political events. They were the realization of Enlightenment ideals, demanding that power be held accountable and that the rights of individuals be respected. The Enlightenment's legacy is profound and enduring. It laid the intellectual groundwork for the modern world, influencing everything from the development of human rights to the spread of secularism and the rise of scientific inquiry. Its emphasis on reason, skepticism, and the pursuit of knowledge continues to shape how societies approach challenges and opportunities. Yet the Enlightenment also serves as a reminder of the complexities of progress. While it broke down many barriers and inspired profound advancements, it also revealed the limits of its own ideals. The era's challenges and contradictions highlight the ongoing struggle to balance reason with emotion, freedom with responsibility, and progress with equity. In its essence, the Enlightenment was a daring act of intellectual courage, a call to question, to explore, and to imagine a better world. Its legacy endures in the democratic principles, scientific advancements, and human rights movements that define our age, reminding us of the power of ideas to illuminate the path forward. The Enlightenment continues to inspire humanity's pursuit of knowledge, freedom, and justice, proving that the light of reason, once ignited, can never truly be extinguished. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a seismic transformation, reshaping human society in ways that were unimaginable just a few decades earlier. Spanning the late 18th to mid-19th centuries, it marked a shift from agrarian economies to industrialized powerhouses, forever altering how people worked, lived, and connected with one another. This era can be visualized as a tidal wave of innovation sweeping across Europe and beyond, leaving behind a world that was profoundly changed. Before this revolution, life was deeply rooted in rural traditions. Most people lived in small villages, farming the land or crafting goods by hand. The rhythms of life followed the seasons, and technological change was gradual, almost imperceptible. But as the 18th century progressed, subtle yet powerful forces began to stir. Advances in agriculture, including crop rotation and selective breeding, dramatically increased food production, freeing many from the toil of farming. This surplus of labor converged with growing urban centers, creating a fertile ground for industrialization. The revolution's beating heart was the factory, a new, almost mythical entity that symbolized both opportunity and upheaval. Factories became the engines of production, fueled by groundbreaking inventions like James Hargreaves' spinning jenny, which allowed one worker to spin multiple spools of thread simultaneously, and Richard Arkwright's water frame, which harnessed water power to drive machines. These innovations revolutionized the textile industry, transforming it from a cottage-based craft into a mass-production juggernaut. Imagine stepping into one of these factories in the early 1800s. The air hums with the rhythmic pounding of machines, the clatter of gears, and the voices of workers shouting over the noise. Men, women, and even children toil side by side, performing repetitive tasks for hours on end. While these factories were marvels of efficiency, they also brought profound social changes. The artisanal craftsman was replaced by the factory worker, marking the rise of a new working class, one bound not to the land, but to the clock. Urbanization was one of the most visible consequences of industrialization. Cities like Manchester and Birmingham swelled with waves of migrants seeking work in the burgeoning factories. These rapidly expanding urban centers became bustling hubs of activity, but they also faced immense challenges. Overcrowding, unsanitary living conditions, and pollution were common. The skies darkened with soot from coal-fired factories, and rivers became choked with industrial waste. For many, the promise of a better life in the city was tempered by harsh realities. Yet alongside these challenges came extraordinary technological breakthroughs that redefined the limits of human capability. The steam engine, perfected by James Watt, was a crowning achievement of the era. It powered trains, ships, and machinery, revolutionizing transportation and manufacturing. Steam locomotives connected cities like never before, transforming commerce and communication. Imagine a world where a journey that once took weeks by horse-drawn carriage could now be completed in days by train. The world became smaller, more interconnected, and more dynamic. Culturally, the Industrial Revolution sparked a rich dialogue about humanity's place in this rapidly changing world. The Romantic movement, led by figures like William Wordsworth and Mary Shelley, arose as a counterpoint to industrialization, emphasizing the beauty of nature and the emotional depth of the human spirit. At the same time, Enlightenment ideals of liberty and equality began to take root in this context. Workers, galvanized by the inequalities they faced, organized to demand better wages, shorter hours, and safer conditions. Their struggles planted the seeds for labor rights movements that would define the 19th and 20th centuries. The Industrial Revolution also reverberated far beyond Europe and North America. It was a global phenomenon, albeit one marked by both progress and exploitation. Industrialized nations sought resources and markets, intensifying colonialism and reshaping economies in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The interconnectedness of trade and industry laid the foundation for the global economy, with enduring implications that we still grapple with today. In its wake, the Industrial Revolution left a world transformed. It brought unimaginable advancements in technology, medicine, and transportation, paving the way for modern civilization. Yet it also highlighted the cost of progress, environmental degradation, social inequalities, and the alienation of labor. This era stands as a powerful reminder of the dual-edged nature of human ingenuity, where every step forward carries both promise and peril. Ultimately, the Industrial Revolution was more than just a period of change. It was a reimagining of what was possible. It taught humanity to think beyond the constraints of the past, to innovate, adapt, and forge new paths. As we reflect on this transformative chapter in history, we are reminded that progress is not without its challenges, but it is through understanding and navigating these complexities that we continue to shape our shared future. The French Revolution. The French Revolution, a tumultuous and transformative era spanning from 1789 to 1799, stands as one of the most pivotal events in human history. It shattered the ancient structures of monarchy and feudalism, replacing them with ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity that would inspire revolutions and political thought for centuries. This revolution wasn't merely a French affair. It ignited a global wave of change, challenging traditional authority and reimagining the relationship between people and power. To understand the roots of the French Revolution, imagine a nation on the brink of collapse. its social fabric fraying under the weight of inequality and economic despair. France in the late 18th century was a society divided into three estates: the clergy, the nobility, and the common people, or third estate. At the top, the clergy and nobility enjoyed vast privileges, wealth, and exemptions from taxes. Below them, the third estate, comprising peasants, urban workers, and the burgeoning middle class, bore the burden of heavy taxation, subsisting on meager incomes, while the ruling classes lived in luxury. This stark divide, akin to a chasm separating two worlds, created deep resentment. The financial strain of supporting costly wars, including France's intervention in the American Revolution, coupled with poor harvests that drove up bread prices, pushed the country toward economic ruin. The common people, already hungry for bread, now hungered for justice and representation. The Enlightenment, a philosophical movement championing reason, individual rights, and equality, provided the intellectual fuel for their growing dissatisfaction. Thinkers like Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu challenged the divine right of kings and argued for the rights of ordinary people, sparking a new vision of governance. By 1789, the pressure had reached a breaking point. King Louis XVI, facing financial chaos, convened the Estates General, a national assembly meant to address the crisis. However, the Third Estate, tired of being marginalized, broke away and declared itself the National Assembly, vowing to draft a constitution. This act of defiance marked the beginning of the Revolution. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, became the Revolution's defining symbol. Imagine a sea of desperate Parisians converging on the fortress prison, not only to seize its weapons, but to dismantle a centuries-old symbol of tyranny. Their victory was a cry of liberation, reverberating throughout France and galvanizing the masses. Soon, peasants in the countryside rose up in what became known as the Great Fear, burning manor houses and destroying feudal records as they sought to erase their oppression. The National Assembly moved swiftly to enact sweeping reforms. In August 1789, it issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a groundbreaking document that proclaimed equality, freedom, and the inalienable rights of all citizens. Men are born and remain free and equal in rights, it declared, a radical statement that resonated far beyond French borders. For the first time, the idea of government accountable to the people began to take shape, a stark contrast to the centuries of monarchical rule. However, revolutions are rarely linear, and the French Revolution soon veered into darker waters. As power shifted, divisions emerged among revolutionaries over the future direction of France. External pressures from neighboring monarchies, alarmed by the upheaval, combined with internal conflicts, fueled paranoia and radicalism. The Jacobins, a revolutionary faction led by Maximilien Robespierre, seized control and ushered in the Reign of Terror from 1793 to 1794. This period was one of intense fear and violence. Picture a society turned on itself where accusations of counter-revolutionary behavior could lead to the guillotine. The very ideals of liberty and equality were overshadowed by a relentless pursuit of ideological purity. Thousands, including King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, were executed. Yet amidst the chaos, the revolution achieved lasting reforms, such as the abolition of feudal privileges and the establishment of secular governance. The Reign of Terror ended with Robespierre's execution, and the revolution entered a more moderate phase. The Thermidorian reaction sought to stabilize the nation, but France remained a turbulent and divided society. Amid this uncertainty, a charismatic and ambitious military leader, Napoleon Bonaparte, rose to prominence. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'état, effectively ending the revolution and establishing the consulate, with himself as first consul. Though he later declared himself emperor, Napoleon preserved many revolutionary reforms, such as the Napoleonic Code, which institutionalized equality before the law and secular governance. His reign, however, marked the revolution's conclusion, transitioning France from a republic to an empire. The impact of the French Revolution extended far beyond France's borders. It inspired revolutionary movements across the globe, from Haiti, where enslaved people fought for and won their freedom, to Latin America, where colonial subjects rose against European powers. The revolution also influenced political thought, embedding ideas of human rights, citizenship, and democracy into the fabric of modern governance. Yet the revolution's legacy is as complex as the event itself. While it championed liberty, it also unleashed violence and upheaval. It dismantled ancient hierarchies, but its promises of equality were often unrealized, particularly for women and marginalized groups. Nonetheless, the French Revolution remains a testament to humanity's capacity to challenge oppression and strive for a more just society. The French Revolution was not merely a historical event, but a profound turning point, a storm that swept away the old world and planted the seeds of modern democracy. Its ideals continue to resonate, reminding us of the power of collective action and the enduring struggle for liberty and justice. Through its triumphs and tragedies, the Revolution remains a powerful symbol of humanity's quest for a better future. The rise of colonial empires. The rise of colonial empires between the 15th and 20th centuries marked a transformative chapter in human history, an era defined by exploration, conquest, and the reshaping of societies on a global scale. Picture the world as a vast map of uncharted oceans and mysterious lands, with European powers driven by ambition, greed, and an insatiable thirst for knowledge, casting their nets across the seas. What followed was a whirlwind of discovery and domination, a phenomenon that ignited competition, fostered cultural exchanges, and left profound and often painful legacies that echo to this day. Colonialism's roots took hold during the Age of Exploration, which began in the late 15th century as European nations sought new trade routes to the east. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 severed vital overland trade connections to Asia, spurring a desperate quest to find alternative paths to the riches of the Orient. It was during this time that figures like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan embarked on voyages that would redefine the boundaries of the known world. Imagine Columbus, his 3 small ships, fragile yet daring, sailing into the Atlantic, their decks filled with the hopes of reaching Asia. Instead, he landed in the Caribbean, unknowingly unveiling a new world. This discovery was exhilarating, but it also unleashed waves of ambition and competition among European powers eager to claim territories and resources. Spain and Portugal quickly emerged as dominant players, carving out vast empires in the Americas, Africa, and Asia. The discovery of gold and silver in the New World flooded European markets, transforming economies and fueling further exploration. Visualize the bustling docks of Seville, where Spanish galleons returned laden with gold, silver, and other riches from the Americas. This wealth transformed Spain into a global powerhouse, but it came at a steep cost. Indigenous populations in the Americas faced enslavement, displacement, and the devastating effects of European diseases. Entire cultures were upended in the name of empire, with ancient civilizations like the Aztecs and Incas falling to the swords and guns of conquistadors such as Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro. By the 17th century, the colonial race had expanded, with England, France, and the Netherlands entering the fray. Unlike Spain and Portugal, these powers focused on trade and the establishment of colonies in North America, the Caribbean, and parts of Asia. The rise of joint stock companies, such as the British East India Company, and the Dutch East India Company revolutionized colonialism by merging private enterprise with imperial ambitions. These companies wielded immense power, governing territories, waging wars, and reaping enormous profits from trade in spices, textiles, and enslaved peoples. Picture the harbors of Amsterdam or London, teeming with ships brimming with sugar, tobacco, and spices. These goods, extracted from distant colonies, fueled economic growth and transformed European societies. Yet this prosperity was built on the backs of enslaved laborers and the exploitation of colonized peoples. The transatlantic slave trade, driven by the demand for plantation labor in the Americas, stands as one of colonialism's darkest legacies. Millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homelands, enduring unimaginable suffering and reshaping the demographics of the Atlantic world. Colonialism was not merely a story of economic exploitation, it also facilitated profound cultural exchanges. European missionaries sought to spread Christianity, often at the expense of indigenous belief systems. Imagine a remote village where missionaries introduced foreign religious practices, displacing local traditions and altering the cultural fabric. While some indigenous communities adopted aspects of European culture, others resisted fiercely, leading to uprisings and prolonged conflicts. The Enlightenment of the 18th century brought new ideas that challenged the moral and ethical foundations of colonialism. Philosophers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau began to emphasize individual rights and the value of consent in governance, sowing seeds of doubt about the legitimacy of imperial rule. At the same time, these ideas inspired resistance movements within the colonies. The American Revolution and the Haitian Revolution demonstrated that colonized peoples could challenge and overthrow imperial powers, setting a precedent for future struggles for independence. The 19th century saw the Industrial Revolution reshape the dynamics of colonialism. Steamships, railroads, and telegraphs allowed for faster exploitation of resources and tighter control over colonies. European powers expanded their empires into Africa and Asia, often justified under the guise of bringing civilization to the uncivilized. This era, sometimes called the New Imperialism, saw a race to claim territories, exemplified by the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, where European nations divided Africa among themselves without regard for existing cultures or societies. Yet the very tools of empire, education, communication, and transportation began to fuel resistance movements. Nationalist leaders like Mahatma Gandhi in India and Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana emerged, drawing on Enlightenment ideals and the growing discontent of colonized peoples to demand independence. By the mid-20th century, the horrors of two world wars further eroded the legitimacy of colonial rule, ushering in a wave of decolonization that reshaped the global order. The rise of colonial empires was a paradox of human history, a tale of ambition and innovation intertwined with exploitation and suffering. It connected the world in unprecedented ways, fostering global trade and cultural exchanges, yet it also perpetuated inequality and injustice on a massive scale. Today, the legacies of colonialism continue to influence global politics, economics, and cultural identities, reminding us of the complexities of empire. As we reflect on this era, we are left with a profound lesson that the pursuit of power and wealth, when unchecked, often comes at an immeasurable human cost. The story of colonialism is a testament to humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction, a reminder of the delicate balance between ambition and responsibility in shaping our shared world. The American Revolution. The American Revolution, often celebrated as a cornerstone of modern democracy, was far more than a clash between Britain and its American colonies. It was a sweeping ideological upheaval, a struggle for liberty, self-governance, and the redefinition of individual rights. Picture 13 distinct colonies, each with its own identity, bound together by growing discontent against a distant monarchy that imposed its will without representation. This discontent would ignite a revolution that reverberated across the globe, altering the course of history. Long before muskets fired in Lexington and Concord, the seeds of revolution had been quietly planted. The British Empire, facing immense debts from the French and Indian War, turned to its American colonies as a source of revenue. Taxes like the Stamp Act of 1765 and the Townshend Acts of 1767 were levied, but they sparked outrage among colonists who lacked representation in Parliament. No taxation without representation became a rallying cry, a powerful declaration of the colonists' demand for autonomy and fairness. Imagine a crowded Boston tavern filled with animated conversations where merchants, artisans, and farmers voiced their frustrations over pints of ale. Their grievances soon turned to action with events like the Boston Tea Party in 1773, a dramatic protest where colonists disguised as Mohawk Indians dumped British tea into the harbor to defy oppressive taxation. The waters of Boston Harbor swirled with tea and rebellion, signaling the rising tide of resistance. Tensions boiled over into armed conflict on April 19, 1775, when British troops and colonial militias clashed at Lexington and Concord. The morning air was filled with the crack of musket fire, marking the shot heard round the world. These skirmishes were not merely a local disturbance, but the beginning of a larger struggle that would challenge the very foundations of monarchy and imperial power. As the conflict escalated, the Continental Congress emerged to unify the colonies. By June 1776, the bold idea of independence was gaining traction. In Philadelphia, a group of delegates drafted the Declaration of Independence, with Thomas Jefferson crafting its powerful words. The Declaration proclaimed that all men are created equal and endowed with unalienable rights, a statement of ideals that transcended its time and place. Imagine the tension and excitement in Independence Hall as delegates debated and ultimately signed this audacious document, setting the colonies on a path towards self-rule. But achieving independence would not come easily. The American forces, a patchwork of militias and volunteers, faced the formidable British Army, one of the most powerful military forces in the world. Under the leadership of General George Washington, the Continental Army endured staggering hardships. Picture the bitter winter at Valley Forge in 1777, where soldiers wrapped in tattered uniforms braved freezing temperatures, their spirits buoyed by an unshakable commitment to the cause of freedom. Key victories like the Battle of Saratoga in 1777 bolstered morale and convinced France to join the war as an ally, providing crucial military and financial support. The Revolution, once a colonial struggle, had now become a global conflict. French ships and troops bolstered the American effort, culminating in the decisive siege of Yorktown in 1781. Imagine the jubilation as British General Cornwallis surrendered, the combined American and French forces celebrating a victory that would echo through history. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 formally ended the war, granting the colonies independence and establishing the United States of America. However, the conclusion of the Revolutionary War marked only the beginning of a new challenge: building a nation. The fledgling republic grappled with questions of governance, unity, and rights. The Articles of Confederation, the first attempt at national government, proved inadequate, prompting the Constitutional Convention of 1787. The resulting U.S. Constitution established a framework for a government that derived its power from the consent of the governed, while the Bill of Rights enshrined individual freedoms. Yet, the lofty ideals of the Revolution were not fully realized for all. While the Declaration of Independence proclaimed equality, the new nation continued to grapple with the realities of slavery, women's rights, and the treatment of indigenous peoples. These unresolved issues would shape the American narrative for centuries to come. The impact of the American Revolution extended far beyond the newly formed United States. Its ideals inspired movements for self-determination and democracy around the globe, from the French Revolution to independence movements in Latin America. The Revolution proved that ordinary people could rise against tyranny and forge a government rooted in liberty and justice. In reflecting on the American Revolution, it becomes clear that it was not merely a war for independence, but a profound transformation of political thought and human aspiration. It demonstrated the power of collective action, the resilience of people striving for freedom, and the enduring influence of ideas grounded in equality and self-governance. Through the sacrifices and vision of its revolutionaries, the American colonies carved out a new nation, leaving an indelible mark on the world. The story of the American Revolution is a testament to the strength of ideals, the courage to challenge oppression, and the belief that a better future is always worth fighting for. The Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleonic Wars, spanning from 1803 to 1815, stand as a defining chapter in European history, a period of sweeping political change, relentless military campaigns, and the towering ambition of one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. Imagine a continent engulfed in turmoil, where revolutionary ideals clashed with imperial dominance, and the old monarchies grappled with the seismic forces of change. This was an era where empires rose and fell, borders shifted like sand, and the very fabric of European society was transformed. The roots of the Napoleonic Wars lay in the French Revolution, which erupted in 1789, toppling centuries of monarchic rule and igniting cries for liberty, equality, and fraternity. Amid the ensuing chaos, a young Corsican-born general, Napoleon Bonaparte, emerged as a beacon of stability and genius. Known for his extraordinary tactical mind and charisma, Napoleon rapidly ascended through the ranks, capturing both the imagination and loyalty of the French people. By 1799, he orchestrated a coup d'état, seizing power and establishing himself as first consul. In 1804, in a moment of audacious self-assertion, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of France at Notre Dame Cathedral, a dramatic act that declared his independence from any authority, even the Pope. As Napoleon consolidated power, his ambitions alarmed the monarchies of Europe, who saw him as both a product and a propagator of revolutionary chaos. These nations, Britain, Austria, Russia, and Prussia, formed coalitions to counter the growing French threat. The stage was set for a series of wars that would engulf Europe in fire and steel, with Napoleon at the center of the storm. Napoleon's military campaigns became the stuff of legend. The Grande Armée, his meticulously organized and highly disciplined force, operated like a well-oiled machine, capable of rapid movements and devastating precision. In 1805, at the Battle of Austerlitz, often called the Battle of the Three Emperors, Napoleon faced the combined forces of Russia and Austria. Using masterful feints and strategic positioning, he orchestrated a crushing victory, cementing his reputation as one of history's greatest military minds. Picture the battlefield shrouded in morning mist, with Napoleon's troops executing maneuvers so flawlessly that even his enemies marveled at their brilliance. At the height of his power, Napoleon reshaped the map of Europe. He dismantled the centuries-old Holy Roman Empire, replacing it with the Confederation of the Rhine, a collection of French-aligned states. His legal reforms, encapsulated in the Napoleonic Code, brought modern principles of equality and secular governance to much of the continent, leaving an enduring legacy. Yet Napoleon's vision of a unified Europe under French dominance also sowed the seeds of resistance. Nationalist movements began to stir in Spain, Germany, and elsewhere, fueled by a desire for self-determination and a rejection of foreign rule. Nowhere was this resistance more vividly displayed than in the Peninsular War. Initially welcomed as liberators, French forces soon faced fierce guerrilla warfare from Spanish partisans, supported by British troops under the Duke of Wellington. Picture the rugged Spanish countryside, where villagers transformed into fighters, ambushing French convoys and melting back into the hills. The Peninsular War drained French resources and morale, becoming a slow but relentless bleed on Napoleon's empire. The turning point came with Napoleon's ill-fated invasion of Russia in 1812. Determined to enforce his continental system, a blockade designed to cripple Britain's economy, Napoleon marched over 600,000 soldiers into the vast expanse of Russia. The campaign began with confident advances, but quickly turned into a nightmare. The Russians employed a scorched earth strategy, destroying supplies and luring the French deeper into their territory. When Napoleon reached Moscow, he found the city abandoned and ablaze, offering no shelter or victory. As winter closed in, the Grande Armée faced starvation, disease, and the unforgiving cold. Imagine a once mighty army reduced to a desperate, ragged procession, trudging through snow under the relentless bite of frost and enemy raids. Of the original force, fewer than 50,000 returned. The disastrous Russian campaign shattered the aura of Napoleon's invincibility. Coalition forces, sensing their moment, pressed their advantage, and by 1814 they marched into Paris. Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to the island of Elba, but his story was far from over. In 1815, he made a dramatic return during the 100 Days, rallying support and reclaiming the throne. Yet his resurgence was short-lived. At the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon faced the combined forces of Britain and Prussia under the Duke of Wellington and General Blücher. The battle was a brutal and chaotic clash, with cannon fire and bayonet charges tearing through the ranks. Despite initial successes, Napoleon's forces were ultimately overwhelmed. The defeat at Waterloo sealed his fate, and he was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, where he would spend the rest of his days. The Napoleonic Wars reshaped Europe and the world in profound ways. They redefined the nature of warfare, introduced modern tactics, and inspired nationalist movements that would later drive revolutions and unifications. The Congress of Vienna, held in the aftermath of Napoleon's defeat, sought to restore balance and stability to Europe, redrawing borders and establishing a framework for diplomacy that would last for decades. Yet the ideals of liberty and equality that Napoleon had both championed and subverted continued to resonate, influencing political thought and social movements well into the future. The story of the Napoleonic Wars is one of ambition and innovation, resistance and resilience. It is a tale of how one man's extraordinary vision and determination reshaped the destiny of a continent, leaving a legacy that continues to fascinate and inspire. As we reflect on this era, we are reminded of the complex interplay between power, ideology, and human will, a dynamic that continues to shape history to this day. The World Wars. The World Wars of the 20th century, World War I and World War II, stand as monumental events that reshaped the globe. These conflicts were not mere clashes of armies. They were titanic struggles that redefined borders, altered societies, and left deep psychological scars on nations and individuals alike. To understand their profound impact, we must journey through the causes, events, and aftermaths of these wars, illustrating how they shaped the modern world. The stage for World War I was set in the early 20th century amid a backdrop of nationalism, militarism, and complex alliances. Imagine a tightly wound spring under pressure, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. Tensions were high in Europe, with countries like Germany, Austria-Hungary, and France vying for dominance. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in June 1914 acted as the spark that ignited this volatile landscape. The aftermath of the assassination was a cascade of events leading to war. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, invoking a web of alliances that quickly dragged the major powers into the fray. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and later the Ottoman Empire, faced off against the Allies, which included France, Russia, and Great Britain. By August 1914, Europe was engulfed in a conflict that would last for 4 long years. The nature of warfare had drastically changed. Gone were the days of traditional battles. The landscape was now dominated by trench warfare. Picture a grim, muddy battlefield where soldiers lived in cramped, unsanitary conditions, enduring the relentless sounds of artillery and the constant threat of death. The Western Front, stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland, became synonymous with stalemate, with both sides suffering horrendous casualties. Battles like the Somme and Verdun epitomized the brutal reality of this new form of warfare, with millions of lives lost for mere yards of territory. As the war dragged on, it profoundly affected the home fronts of the warring nations. Propaganda flooded newspapers, urging citizens to support the war effort. Rationing became common as resources were diverted to sustain the armies. In many countries, women stepped into roles traditionally held by men, working in factories and serving in various capacities, forever changing societal norms. The war's global impact was also significant. In the colonies, people fought for their imperial rulers, hoping that their sacrifices would be recognized and rewarded. This hope for greater autonomy would later fuel independence movements in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. By 1918, the war was nearing its end. The Central Powers were weakening, facing internal dissent and economic collapse. In November 1918, an armistice was declared, bringing an end to hostilities. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 would officially conclude the war, imposing harsh reparations on Germany and redrawing the map of Europe. However, the treaty sowed the seeds of future conflict, creating resentment and economic hardship in Germany. Fast forward to the 1930s, and the world was reeling from the aftermath of World War I. Economic depression and political instability fostered an environment ripe for totalitarian regimes to rise. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on public discontent, promoting a nationalistic and expansionist ideology. In Italy, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime mirrored these ambitions. Japan, seeking to expand its empire, began its militaristic pursuits in Asia. The invasion of Poland by Germany on September 1, 1939, marked the official beginning of World War II. The swift and brutal tactics employed by the Nazis, known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War, caught the world by surprise. Picture a coordinated assault with tanks and aircraft overwhelming defenses in a matter of days, illustrating the new, terrifying face of modern warfare. The conflict quickly escalated, engulfing Europe and eventually drawing in nations from around the globe. The Allies, initially comprising Britain and France, soon expanded to include the Soviet Union and the United States after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. This global nature of the war set it apart from its predecessor, making it a truly worldwide conflict. One of the darkest chapters of World War II was the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime, were systematically exterminated. This genocide serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the consequences of unchecked hatred and bigotry. The Holocaust's chilling narrative unfolded in concentration camps where people were stripped of their humanity and dignity, creating a haunting legacy that still resonates today. World War II saw the mobilization of entire nations in a total war effort. Civilians became active participants in the war, from working in factories, producing war materials, to serving in support roles in the military. Rationing, propaganda, and air raids became everyday realities. The Battle of Britain exemplified this as the British populace endured relentless bombing while maintaining their resolve. As the war reached its climax, significant turning points such as the Battle of Stalingrad and the D-Day invasion at Normandy began to shift the balance in favor of the Allies. By 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally, followed by Japan after the devastating atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war left an indelible mark on the world, with an estimated 70 to 85 million fatalities, making it the deadliest conflict in human history. The aftermath of the wars led to the establishment of the United Nations, aimed at fostering international cooperation and preventing future conflicts. The geopolitical landscape was forever altered, with the emergence of the United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers, setting the stage for the Cold War. The world wars serve as powerful reminders of the complexities of human nature, the dangers of totalitarianism, and the dire consequences of unresolved conflicts. They illustrate how quickly the world can be plunged into chaos and how ordinary people are affected by decisions made far above them. As we reflect on this tumultuous history, we are reminded of the need for dialogue, understanding, and cooperation to forge a more peaceful future. The legacy of the world wars continues to influence contemporary geopolitics, urging us to learn from the past to shape a better tomorrow. The Cold War. The Cold War, a term heavy with historical significance, defines an era of unparalleled geopolitical tension and ideological rivalry. Spanning nearly half a century, this struggle was not waged on battlefields, but in the realms of politics, technology, and influence. It was a chess match between the United States and the Soviet Union, where every move, every decision, carried the weight of a world balanced precariously between peace and annihilation. The roots of the Cold War were sown in the aftermath of World War II. As the Axis powers fell, the victorious Allies found themselves divided by their visions for the post-war world. On one side stood the United States, championing capitalism and democracy. On the other, the Soviet Union, advocating for communism and state-controlled economies. These ideologies were more than economic systems. They were worldviews, each claiming to offer the path to a better future. Imagine a vast chessboard stretching across continents, each piece representing a nation, as these superpowers sought to expand their influence. The first clash of this ideological divide became visible in the ruins of Europe. As nations rebuilt, the continent was split into Eastern and Western blocs. Winston Churchill's term, Iron Curtain, vividly captured the division, with the Soviet Union consolidating its hold on Eastern Europe, turning countries like Poland and East Germany into satellite states. Meanwhile, the United States and its allies moved to bolster democracy in the West, leading to the creation of NATO in 1949. This military alliance was a clear signal that the West would stand united against Soviet aggression. Berlin, a city divided both physically and ideologically, became the Cold War's most iconic symbol. In 1948, the Soviets attempted to force the Allies out of West Berlin by imposing a blockade, cutting off all road and rail access. The U.S. and its allies responded with the Berlin Airlift, flying in food, fuel, and supplies. For nearly a year, planes filled the skies, a testament to the West's resolve and an early victory in the Cold War chess game. The rivalry soon spilled beyond Europe. Proxy wars became a defining feature where the superpowers backed opposing sides in regional conflicts. The Korean War, 1950-1953, was among the first of these. North Korea, supported by the Soviets and China, invaded the South, prompting the U.S. and a coalition of United Nations forces to intervene. The war ended in a stalemate, leaving Korea divided along the 38th parallel, a division that persists to this day. The Cold War's battlegrounds were not limited to conflicts on the ground. The space above became a new frontier in the struggle for dominance. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the world's first artificial satellite. This achievement shocked the United States, sparking the space race, a technological competition that embodied the Cold War's intensity. The U.S. responded with the Apollo program, culminating in the moon landing in 1969, a symbolic victory that asserted American technological superiority. Beneath these outward rivalries loomed an even darker shadow, the nuclear arms race. Both the United States and the Soviet Union amassed vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, creating a doctrine of mutually assured destruction, MAD. This precarious balance meant that any direct conflict between the superpowers could result in global annihilation. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought this fear into stark reality. When the U.S. discovered Soviet missile installations in Cuba, the world teetered on the brink of nuclear war. For 13 tense days, the world watched as leaders negotiated a fragile resolution, pulling humanity back from the precipice. While the Cold War saw moments of near catastrophe, it also witnessed efforts at détente, a relaxation of tensions. Arms control agreements like the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT, in the 1970s, sought to curb the nuclear arms race. Yet these agreements were often undermined by renewed hostilities, such as the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, which reignited tensions and drew the United States into another proxy conflict. By the 1980s, cracks began to appear in the Soviet Union's facade. Under the leadership of Mikhail Gorbachev, reforms aimed at reviving the struggling Soviet economy inadvertently accelerated its decline. Glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, unleashed forces of change that Gorbachev could not control. Eastern European nations, inspired by these reforms, began to assert their independence, culminating in the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The image of East and West Berliners tearing down the wall with their bare hands became a powerful symbol of the Cold War's end. In 1991, the Soviet Union itself collapsed, dissolving into 15 independent republics. The Cold War, which had dominated global politics for decades, came to an abrupt end. The United States emerged as the world's sole superpower, while the former Soviet states faced the daunting task of rebuilding and redefining their futures. The Cold War's legacy is vast and multifaceted. It shaped international relations, fueled technological innovation, and left a profound cultural imprint. The ideological battles of the era influenced everything from literature and film to education and propaganda. Yet it also left scars, proxy wars, divided nations, and a pervasive sense of mistrust that lingers in some corners of the world. As we reflect on the Cold War, it serves as both a cautionary tale and a testament to human resilience. It reminds us of the dangers of division and the importance of diplomacy in navigating global challenges. The Cold War may have ended, but its lessons continue to resonate, urging us to seek cooperation over conflict and unity over division in our pursuit of a more peaceful world. The Space Race. The space race, a gripping chapter in human history, stands as a testament to ambition, competition, and boundless innovation. It was more than a contest between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. It was a reflection of humanity's determination to explore the cosmos and a pivotal battleground for ideological supremacy during the Cold War. To understand the space race is to witness a dramatic saga where the boundaries of possibility were redefined and the stars became the ultimate prize. In the aftermath of World War II, the world's geopolitical landscape was reshaped, with the United States and the Soviet Union emerging as rival superpowers. Each sought to demonstrate its technological and ideological dominance. The vast, uncharted frontier of space became the new arena for this rivalry, a place where dreams of exploration intertwined with strategic ambition. The race began in earnest in 1957 when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. Imagine a gleaming metal sphere orbiting Earth, emitting a steady beep that echoed around the world, a sound that both thrilled and terrified. Sputnik wasn't just a technological achievement. It was a clear signal that the Soviets had leapt ahead in the race for the cosmos. In the United States, this revelation ignited a wave of urgency and introspection. Suddenly, space was no longer an abstract frontier. It was a critical theater of the Cold War. In response, the United States ramped up its space efforts. Schools began emphasizing science and mathematics, and government funding for research surged. By 1958, NASA was established, signaling America's commitment to catching up and surpassing the Soviet Union. Yet the path forward was fraught with challenges. Early American attempts at space exploration faced public failures, with rockets that exploded on the launch pad and missions that fell short of their goals. These setbacks only heightened the stakes, turning the space race into a relentless struggle for both technological superiority and national pride. The stakes escalated further in 1961 when Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit Earth. His triumphant journey aboard the Soviet spacecraft Vostok 1 captured the world's imagination and underscored the Soviet Union's lead in the space race. For many in the West, Gagarin's feat was a stark reminder of the high stakes and the intense pressure to respond. The United States, galvanized by President John F. Kennedy's vision, set its sights on a bold and audacious goal: to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Kennedy's declaration, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard," electrified the nation. It was a call to action, embodying the spirit of innovation and resilience that defined the era. NASA's Apollo program became the centerpiece of this effort, a monumental undertaking that demanded cutting-edge technology, unparalleled coordination, and immense human courage. The journey to the moon was anything but smooth. The tragic loss of 3 astronauts during the Apollo 1 pre-launch test in 1967 served as a somber reminder of the risks involved. Yet these challenges only strengthened the resolve of those dedicated to the mission. Engineers, scientists, and astronauts worked tirelessly, refining every detail, driven by the belief that their efforts transcended national interests. They were advancing humanity's reach into the cosmos. On July 20, 1969, the world watched in awe as Apollo 11 achieved the seemingly impossible. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to set foot on the moon, while Michael Collins orbited above in the command module. Armstrong's words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," resonated across the globe, capturing the profound significance of the moment. Imagine the silence that enveloped living rooms, classrooms, and public squares as people witnessed a human being walking on another celestial body for the first time. The moon landing was not just a technological triumph. It was a victory for human determination and ingenuity. It symbolized what could be achieved when nations dared to dream and work together, even amid intense rivalry. The space race continued in various forms, but the moon landing marked its zenith, a moment when humanity collectively reached beyond Earth's boundaries. While the space race was born out of competition, it also paved the way for collaboration. The 1975 Apollo-Soyuz test project, where American and Soviet spacecraft docked in orbit, demonstrated the potential for cooperation even in an era of rivalry. This spirit of partnership laid the foundation for future endeavors, such as the International Space Station, where nations work side by side to explore the final frontier. The legacy of the space race extends far beyond its immediate accomplishments. It spurred advancements in technology, from satellite communications to medical innovations. It inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and dreamers to reach for the stars. Perhaps most importantly, it reminded humanity of its shared destiny, our place as explorers in an infinite universe. In reflecting on the space race, we see a story not just of conflict, but of aspiration. It was a time when the impossible became possible, when nations dared to look up and imagine a future beyond Earth. Today, as we embark on new journeys to Mars, explore distant planets, and search for life beyond our solar system, we carry with us the legacy of those who first dared to leave our world behind. The space race remains a testament to what we can achieve when we challenge our limits and aim for the stars. The Digital Revolution. The digital revolution, a transformative era in human history, has profoundly reshaped our lives, connecting us in ways once unimaginable and redefining how we work, learn, and communicate. Picture waking up in a world where information flows like air, where connections span continents in an instant, and where knowledge is always within reach. Beginning in the mid-20th century, this technological upheaval continues to accelerate, influencing every facet of society, culture, and the global economy. The story of the digital revolution begins in the 1940s and 1950s, amidst the backdrop of World War II. Visionaries like Alan Turing and John von Neumann pioneered the development of early computers, massive machines powered by vacuum tubes and punch cards that filled entire rooms. These machines, while primitive by today's standards, were capable of calculations that would have taken humans months to complete. Imagine engineers surrounded by blinking lights and humming machinery, laying the groundwork for a technological renaissance. The breakthrough moment came in 1947 with the invention of the transistor. This tiny device replaced bulky vacuum tubes, paving the way for smaller, faster, and more efficient computers. By the 1970s, companies like Apple and IBM were introducing personal computers, bringing the power of computation into homes and offices. Picture the excitement of unboxing a computer, a portal to a new world of possibilities, right on your desk. Meanwhile, another revolutionary technology was quietly taking shape: the Internet. Initially developed in the 1960s as a military communication network, the Internet evolved into a decentralized system linking computers across the globe. Imagine creating an invisible web connecting distant lands, enabling the instantaneous sharing of ideas and information. By 1991, the introduction of the World Wide Web transformed this network into a user-friendly platform, allowing people to access vast reservoirs of knowledge with a simple click. The Internet democratized access to information, akin to walking into an infinite library where every book and idea is at your fingertips. This technological leap fundamentally changed how we interact with knowledge, making it possible to learn, communicate, and collaborate on an unprecedented scale. The digital revolution brought seismic shifts to daily life. Email and instant messaging revolutionized communication, shrinking the world and enabling people to connect across time zones and continents. Think of it as a global coffee shop where conversations happen in real time, no matter the distance. Social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram further transformed how we interact, building virtual communities that transcended geographic and cultural boundaries. Yet, this connectivity also brought challenges, including concerns over privacy, misinformation, and the mental health impacts of constant connectivity. Economically, the digital revolution redefined industries and created new ones. E-commerce giants like Amazon revolutionized shopping, offering consumers the ability to browse virtual storefronts and have goods delivered directly to their doorsteps. Imagine turning your smartphone into a mall where every item is just a click away. The gig economy emerged alongside, with platforms like Uber and Airbnb providing flexible work opportunities, challenging traditional employment models, and sparking debates about labor rights and job security. In education, digital technology broke down barriers, making learning accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Online courses, virtual classrooms, and educational apps have empowered individuals worldwide to acquire knowledge at their own pace. Picture a child in a remote village attending a lecture by a world-renowned scientist via live stream, illustrating the transformative potential of digital learning. The revolution also ushered in a data-driven era. Companies now leverage vast amounts of information to tailor products, predict trends, and optimize services. Data analytics have transformed industries from healthcare to finance, enabling precision and innovation previously unimagined. However, this reliance on data has raised critical ethical questions about privacy, surveillance, and control. Despite its many benefits, the digital revolution has also highlighted disparities. The digital divide remains a pressing issue, with many communities lacking access to reliable internet and technology. This inequity raises fundamental questions about inclusion and opportunity in the digital age, reminding us that technological advancement must be accompanied by efforts to ensure equitable access. As technology evolves at an unprecedented pace, the challenges grow more complex. Issues of cybersecurity, misinformation, and the ethical use of artificial intelligence loom large. We stand at a crossroads, navigating a delicate balance between innovation and responsibility, ensuring that digital tools serve humanity rather than undermine it. The digital revolution is far more than a technological phenomenon. It represents a cultural metamorphosis that continues to shape our world. With advancements like quantum computing, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence on the horizon, the possibilities seem boundless. Yet this era also calls for vigilance, critical thinking, and ethical stewardship to ensure that technology uplifts and empowers everyone. In the vast narrative of human progress, the digital revolution is a new dawn, illuminating the boundless potential of human creativity and connection. As we embrace the opportunities of this digital age, let us also commit to addressing its challenges, forging a future where technology enriches lives and unites us in our shared pursuit of knowledge, understanding, and progress. Globalization and modern history. Globalization and modern history are interwoven stories, chronicling humanity's journey toward ever deeper connections. Imagine a vast tapestry, each thread representing a unique culture, economy, or people, bound together by the forces of technology, trade, and communication. This intricate web has made the world smaller, yet it raises profound questions about identity, culture, and our shared future. Long before the Internet allowed instant global connectivity, ancient trade routes like the Silk Road were lifelines of cultural and economic exchange. Picture merchants braving vast deserts and treacherous mountain passes, carrying silk, spices, and ideas that transcended borders. These routes not only transported goods, but also served as conduits for religions, philosophies, and technologies, sowing the seeds of globalization millennia ago. As empires like those of Alexander the Great expanded, they became melting pots of diverse traditions, languages, and innovations. His conquests introduced Greek culture across a vast expanse, blending with local customs to create the Hellenistic world, a vivid precursor to the cultural fusion that defines globalization today. The age of exploration in the 15th and 16th centuries marked a new era of global connectivity. Imagine Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama navigating uncharted oceans, driven by dreams of wealth and glory. Their voyages linked continents, sparking an unprecedented exchange of goods, ideas, and even diseases. The Columbian Exchange transformed diets worldwide. Potatoes and tomatoes revolutionized European cuisine, while horses and cattle reshaped the Americas. Yet this exchange came at a cost, as indigenous populations suffered devastating losses to disease and colonization. The Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries accelerated globalization on an unprecedented scale. Envision the rise of factories, their chimneys billowing steam as workers toiled to produce goods at record speed. Railroads and steamships shrank distances, linking markets and enabling the flow of raw materials and manufactured products. Nations became interconnected as never before, but the exploitation of colonies for resources and labor highlighted the darker side of global integration. The 20th century brought both devastation and unity. World Wars I and II reshaped borders and societies, but they also fostered a desire for international cooperation. Imagine the founding of the United Nations in 1945, where representatives from diverse nations gathered to prevent future conflicts and promote human rights. This spirit of collaboration extended to the global economy, with institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund fostering trade and development. By the late 20th century, the digital revolution ushered in a new phase of globalization. Picture a world where a single email can cross continents in seconds and where vast databases of knowledge are accessible to anyone with an internet connection. The internet transformed communication, commerce, and culture, creating a global marketplace and fostering a sense of shared citizenship. Social media platforms connected billions, enabling individuals to share stories, build movements, and address global challenges together. Yet this era of hyperconnectivity also brought challenges. The digital divide left many communities without access to technology, while concerns about privacy, misinformation, and cyber threats underscored the complexities of our interconnected world. The very tools that unite us also expose vulnerabilities, requiring thoughtful navigation. Today, globalization is a double-edged sword. It fosters cultural exchange and economic growth, but it can also lead to cultural homogenization and widening inequalities. The delicate balance between embracing global connectivity and preserving local identities remains a central challenge. The latest pandemic revealed both the strengths and fragility of our global systems. Supply chains faltered, economies struggled, yet scientific collaboration across borders led to breakthroughs in record time. This crisis underscored our shared humanity and the necessity of collective action to address global challenges like climate change and public health. Globalization is not a monolithic force. It is a dynamic process shaped by human choices. As we navigate this interconnected world, we must ensure that its benefits reach everyone, not just a privileged few. Listening to marginalized voices, respecting cultural diversity, and fostering equity are essential for building a future that reflects our shared values. Imagine the tapestry of globalization as a work in progress, with each of us holding a thread. Together, we have the power to weave a world that celebrates diversity, fosters collaboration, and addresses the challenges of our time. As the story of globalization continues to unfold, let us strive to create a narrative of inclusion, understanding, and shared prosperity. The threads of our collective history remind us that, despite our differences, we are bound by a common humanity, capable of shaping a future worthy of our shared dreams.